Hello, everybody, and welcome to Doppler's Gear Garage. Super excited to have you here. Wherever you're at, do us a favor, hop in the chat, let us know where you're coming from. We have some amazing people joining us for this first show. And to kick things off, first of all, I think you know who our first guest is going to be. We're also going to have Ryan Fluff Bruce coming up, and we're also going to have Eric Klein from Line 6. And so, ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, I hand you over to Mr. Joe Satriani.
Oh, hey, I thought this was your show, Doug.
No, this is the Joe Show. How you doing?
Oh, my God.
So, Joe, where are you coming to us from?
Well, I'm sheltered somewhere in San Francisco, having fun. I've got my Aquavit right over there just in case things get crazy. And I got my guitar. I'm just noticing it's the same guitar that's right over here on the inside of this beautiful piece of vinyl, which is great. And I thought we used a different one, but I realized it's all scuffed up. That must mean it's this one. So trusty number 3. So that's good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So the first time I saw you play, the Squares were opening a women's clothing store in Berkeley, just down the street from the original Pete's Coffee on Vine Street. And I specifically recall walking in and seeing that you had a rubber chicken attached to your microphone stand. What significance or tone factor did the rubber chicken play?
Integral to the sound, of course.
The Squares always reminded me of a combination of like the Beatles meet Van Halen, in that Andy was very clearly influenced by Paul McCartney. He was a bass playing lead vocalist, and your guitar playing, you were clearly impacted by what Eddie was doing. But I never heard the story of how you guys actually got together.
Yeah, we started in Jeff Campitelli's garage in late 79, decided to try to create a power pop band that was a blend of our unlikely partnership. I mean, the three of us, Jeff Campitelli on drums, just out of high school, Andy Milton from Cleveland, Ohio, really into Elvis and rockabilly stuff. And then there's me, just metalhead from the early 70s and, bebop student of Lenny Tristano and classically trained in high school. And I just wanted to do everything. But so the three of us just sort of got together, argued a bit, but decided maybe if we all kind of play it cool a little bit and come up with a blend that nobody's thought of, we can, forge some sort of original sound. And we would take these funny gigs, which was that very trendy clothing store. I'm still trying to remember the name of it. It wasn't Yarmo, it was something else. What was it? I don't know.
Yarmo was down on Telegraph, and Rabina used to work there, didn't she?
That's right, yes.
So let's go even further back than the Squares.
Very good. That's, Carr Place High School. I'm wearing that sad excuse for a Jimi Hendrix hat, but I've got that 68 Telly with a Bixby vibrato on there. I bought that through some sort of classified paper, that used to exist before Craigslist and stuff like that. Really cool sounding Telecaster. Actually had one of the very first DiMarzio pickups in the neck position. And I didn't really know who Larry was at the time, but I went into the city to get to this guy, Charles LeBou, on 48th Street to put in a pickup. I heard about this Staten Island pickup people were talking about, hot-wired humbucking. And this crazy guy walked from the back room covered in bone dust, maybe sawdust, I don't know, red curly hair. He's like, yeah, I can make you one of them pickups. What do you want? Anyway, that went in there. I've known Larry for ages, even before I knew him. But that was the Telecaster. And I was just beginning to play with my teeth. When I would run out of ideas, that was a good thing to do when you're in high school anyway.
The new record just debuted at number 8 on the Billboard chart. That's kind of unheard of. So, first of all, how does that feel? That debuted and charted even higher than surfing?
Surfing entered at 183 or 186. I mean, as close to the bottom as you're almost going to get. And I remember thinking that was a miracle that a record like mine, like Surfing, would even chart anyway. Wasn't even thinking about like the record entering any chart. But that was a whole other reality of the music business back then. And a record could stay on the charts for a really long time, and regional radio could really make it ride the wave up and down the charts for years, as it did. I think it made it up to 29 and stayed there for about 6 weeks or so, which was really remarkable. And but still, every era has got its parameters that you have to take into consideration, and higher is always better. It's never bad. So getting a career high with this record is really fantastic. I'm really happy.
In an era where it's a single-driven market, to have a record chart like that is kind of absolutely uncommon, especially for an instrumental disc. Can you explain why this album at this time? I mean, if you were to kind of go, okay, at this era in time, instrumental music, by some accounts, has kind of reached its peak. But obviously not. Last time I checked, and by the way, I'm responsible for about 700,000 of the 1,700,000 views in 1980. Though, thank you, dude. That track is just, if there's a sweet spot, that would be it, and it's just lovely. Tell me about how you think that track impacted the album and why all these things happened now.
I was in my studio, and I'm finishing the Squares record that finally came out last year. And that had taken a lot of work and just a lot of soul searching, emotional turmoil just to get through it. Once it came out, of course, it was a great relief. I was very proud of it and what everybody did to make it happen. And it was funny because it literally took us 39 years to get a record deal. And it's just absurd. However, I'm sitting here really at this desk holding this guitar, and I'm thinking, well, is that it? That is the strangest, journey I think I've ever had with a band and a collection of music. And I felt moved to write something that was about that, about maybe what I was trying to do, what I didn't do, what I wanted to do, the hopes and dreams of that era. And I started thinking about, what I was playing back then, how I held back, different things that I wanted to achieve and didn't. And then I just thought, well, I should just write a song about that, just that strange group of feelings, emotions that I'm having. And out came that song. And then down, you can't see it, but on the floor was the Eddie Van Halen MXR phaser. And I was like, well, of course I have to use that, because that, that sort of reminds me of that era that Eddie crystallized so well. And I was such a big fan of Eddie's, and just, besides his talent and his writing and his guitar playing, his vibe was so good. And I thought, well, I need to sort of capture how I was so excited about guitar playing back then. And so that's how that song got written and then recorded. And I was so shocked when people liked it. I mean, I really thought there was some other songs on the record that Sony and management were going to say, that's the first song we want people to hear. But everybody said, no, it's got to be 1980. And you know what, Doug, when we were mixing this, we had more parts in the song. We had more breakdowns. Some parts were extended. And we sat there and we went, how would we do this if it was like 1980 and we were in a studio and things were happening in the studio like what always happened in the studio in 1980? And, what would we do if we just were not satisfied with the velocity of the song? We would start, editing out parts. And so Jim and I looked for parts that we thought were just a slight bit redundant. And even though people might say, oh, I wish that part went on twice as long, we thought, well, then they'll just have to listen to the song twice, So we actually went in and removed some pieces so that the song would even move faster. So it was all by design, from the writing all the way down to the final mixing.
one of the guys that I've gotten to know from one of your camps, Rick Costa, sent me
Mhm.
this video of crying, and one of the things that there we go. What do you got? What do you got?
No, I'm not doing anything.
Okay.
I was just hoping I'd see your face instead of
Ah,
a dialog box with files and files and files.
hang on a second. You're not going to see me, but let me give you this other screen here. Hang on a second. Let me be tech support here. There we go. So going to do this right here. So the thing is that one of the things that was, how's that?
That's good.
Okay, great. One of the things that was really interesting about watching him play that song with you is that, and it's slightly esoteric, but not, and it's, in many ways is the essence of what makes your playing so unique. And there are lots of great guitar players, and there are other guitar players that do it, but I would have to say you do it better than anybody else. So he was playing along with the track, and I was struck by not just the level of emotion of what he was playing through, but literally it was as if there was a conversation happening that you had helped him find words with the guitar that he would not have found without that. And it wasn't like it was just regurgitating the licks and playing the notes. There was something deeper in the communication of the melody that conveyed, if you will, the unspoken things that music allows us to communicate. And it was, for me, a really interesting moment watching that communication happen, that you created this song, but watching him play it, you gave him the ability to put musical language to something that was an emotion that he felt, that was a shared emotion. And I realize that's a little esoteric, but at the same time, that's a very powerful thing as a musician to be able to do. How much of that process are you aware of when you realize that your music is resonating with people, and how much of it is like that's an intended thing, and how much of it is like, oh, that's something that happened that maybe was an unexpected consequence?
Well, it's always great when you see people experiencing your music however they want to do it. I mean, it's freaky. It's really hard to, in a way, it's hard to deal with it, but because you don't know what to do with it, I suppose, other than to say that's cool, But I have to say that when I'm writing music, I'm really just writing for myself. I'm trying to be as honest as possible with that transmission of feeling into music, and then I never think about how it's going to be received. Certainly on that level, when we're making an album finally and we're mixing, of course we want to know, is this too loud? Is that too soft? And we play with things in the mix, but that's different. If we're really just talking about feelings and music, I've learned not to, to be judgmental or to bring in other points of view when my job really is simply to tell a story, my story, as truthfully as possible. And it doesn't have to be sad or deep or heavy or profound. It can be as simple as getting in a car, a convertible at the end of school, and it's the summer and you're going to have fun. So there's Summer Song. But it is a feeling, and it in my mind, everything in life should have a song or a million songs about it, right? So who else is going to write them? I'm going to write them. So I don't mind that. I will write a silly song about meeting an alien and going surfing, and I will write songs about people that I miss because they've passed on. I'll write songs purely about how much I love somebody else's playing, and it gets more complex, and it gets to the point where sometimes I don't even know how to express it completely what I'm feeling, because life is sometimes like that. You're confused with your own feelings, but that also is a valid reason to create art around that. So that's what I do. So if someone else starts to play like me or uses the same method, I'm happy, because I'm a consumer of music and I want to hear good, truthful stories coming from other people, because I want to know, like, it's sort of like we don't know what we're doing here. We don't know how we got here. and we look at each other and we go, do you know? Like, how is it for you? That's kind of like what everybody wants to know. And music is such a great way to say, I've been alive and this happened to me, and listen to this. And maybe you can relate to it. Maybe it makes your journey easier. Maybe it helps explain something or gets you to your next step, you know. That's the thing I really love about it. But I know that it means that my job gets very well defined, and as it should for any composer or interpreter of music, which is you better be yourself. No one is interested in somebody copying somebody else, unless it's like, you know, some sort of review show at a nightclub or something, like Relive the 70s or the 90s or whatever. Yeah, okay, you want the guy to nail it or something like that. But really what drives music is originality. And I really do think it's because of that. I think we're all searching for answers. And so we want to know. We look at each other, we look in each other's eyes, and we say, well, what's it like for you? What have you found out? Have you found out anything? Do you know the secret? Let me know. You know.
That's awesome.
Because it might sound like that. No, it won't.
That's awesome. Pitch axis.
Yes.
So, do me a favor and let's start with the origin of where it came from.
We were talking about this last night, how we were, I seem to remember it was like early 20th century, you know, compositional technique. A lot of them were being invented around that time. And we talked about Tone Rose, Schoenberg, you know, musique concrète coming a little bit later, decades later. But, you know, composers were trying everything. And I think that was just one idea instead of the endless, always trying to find one, you know, going back to one, go through these steps, make sure you do this and do that. You know, they started to think, well, what if the bass just stayed in one place? And the key signatures moved around. And you know, you got to figure 1 million musicians had been doing that in pubs all the time. But somebody with a wig on decided to give it a name or fancy clothes, and every other musician went, oh, like, duh, I've been doing that for years, you know. But here we are, you know, a century later, and we're talking really about, in layman's terms, the perceived key of the song, which is usually the lowest note. It's the bass note, the thing that's going thump, thump, thump. That seems to be the main note of the song for anybody out there listening who's not into music theory. We all know what it is. Stop anybody on the street, they can point it out. So it's an obvious human trait. We know kind of like what the key of the song is. We don't know what it's called unless we're musicians, but who cares, right? However, musicians, you know, we elicit responses out of people by playing with things. And I don't know if I've got the right tones for any of this stuff, but, you know, it's really distorted. Sorry about that. And I think I got this phaser on here too. So, you know, that's an A major chord. I'm doing E flat, so sue me for detuning. But you might not use that, you know, or its neighbor, B flat major, for something odd, right? But if the chord, can you hear that, Doug?
Yes.
Bass note. Anyone will tell you there's something wrong there, right? So, again, call and response, every person can really realize what's going on. It's basically because whatever that low note is, we say, well, that's the main thing, and everything else that's going on over here, which are the chords, we rate it, we understand it in relation to that thing there. So in the case of the pitch axis, if somebody out there knows Ravel, they'll know about the bolero, Ravel's bolero, and you know, it's a thumping note that just keeps going on. I know it sounds like Van Halen here, right? I should be playing that with my teeth, like Mike Anthony. But we're talking about key signatures that revolve and change while the bass note, the perceived key, stays the same. So I'm going to change something. Let me see if I get a cleaner sound here. And you can hear that, right?
Yes.
Right? So I started my first album off with this chord.
Oh, you're going to go to Not of This Earth. Here we go. Come on. All right.
Yeah.
No, this is, all right.
I can't play it because then
okay. Wait, but you could do it double. You could do it twice as long, as you can move it down a half step. You're going to move it back up and move it up. So that's
so as you know, for people can see, I think they can see me. So I'm playing this major 13th kind of chord, major 7th with a 6th. E is the bass note, and on the record, you know, eventually the bass comes in and it's just doing that low E. And I change the chord. I use a chord that's not in the key of E major, which was the key that I just established before. And now these notes are really part of E minor. And I go back up. So I've changed key again. Again, I've changed it over here. I haven't changed it over there where the bass note is. And you're still grooving on that. And then I change it again because I play this 7th suspended chord. And then I just repeat it. And so this is the perfect example of pitch axis. You just keep hearing that, and this chord keeps changing. Now, the trick was, of course, is how do you have this shifting harmony, these 3 different keys that are changing, happening, and then how do you play a melody with that? You've got to be a clever little serpent that does this to navigate through these different key signatures, but never make the audience feel like you're not playing with the thumping bass and you're not playing with the crazy sounding snare drum, and that you somehow are just doing, here are a couple of notes for that chord, here are a couple of notes for that chord, here are a couple of notes. Anybody can do that. That's like what a student would do. But what you have to think about is, where is this melody going? Is it 16 bars? Is it 32 bars? What do I need to do to sustain interest? And so you have to kind of think, what would I, almost like what we were talking about last night, you have to decide, what is it that I like? What is it that I want? And that should drive you to compose the proper melody.
So, okay. 7/5 flat 7/5 7/5 1, I think is where the melody goes. So as you're playing that, na 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 na.
Yeah.
Are you thinking numbers? Are you thinking pitch? Are you thinking note names? Or are you just flipping playing?
I'm imagining somebody or something playing the melody. That's usually what I do, is I start playing that rhythm and I ask myself, what do I want to hear? What would make me so happy as the first note to hear? And what is the song about again? You know, for me, it's about this enigmatic figure that's not really of this earth, but is beautiful nonetheless. In other words, not scary, dripping with acid fluid and horns and whatever, you know, like the alien. No, this is something cosmically beautiful, profoundly beautiful, but you can't figure it out. So that's why the keys are changing. But there's the thumb. So it keeps you going. You want to see, where's this going to end? How's this going to work out? You know? So that's what I thought. And I'm feeling the melody come to me and I go, I'll play that. I'll try that. And every time I'd be in the studio, we'd go through a run through, and like in the early records, John Kunenberry would be sitting there listening to me, and we'd go like, that's the melody. Okay, let's see if we can make it work. Like, because he'd hear the melody and he'd think, well, okay, how can I record this so that it really works? If that's what Joe is going to play, then he'd say, give me a second. I got another mic. Or I think we should move the amp over there. You don't have to change what you're playing, but let me just try this. And so we would play around like that until that melody that I'd composed had a sound that was also original, that we felt no one's done this before. This is going to help tell this story, elicit this response about this profoundly cosmically beautiful, not of this earth entity.
Before we continue on, it just reminded me. So we used to share a teaching studio. And I think
Yeah.
I fessed up once, and this is the funniest side that I want to share with people, because I think it was not of this earth that you stole my gorilla out of the studio for a session and didn't tell me after I told you I used to come down and play your guitars in the middle of the night. So, by the way, at some point sooner than later, we're going to do a little giveaway. The folks at IK Multimedia were kind enough to provide an AXE I, which invariably we're going to talk about before we have our next guests come on the show and you have an aquavit moment. So the thing is, it was that track. It's an interesting thing because in many ways, if you look at if you will, kind of the vertical concepts that represent an artist, always it was an iconic piece in the way it kind of represented one vertical. But Not of This Earth, it's a very interesting thing as an artist to start with a statement that is that profound and that uniquely yours. Did you have a moment when you sat and played those chords and went, I've muted every single speaker in here. Do you mind? All right. So the point being is that is a really profound chord progression where you kind of go, because the interesting thing is, as I've looked at that and going, is he thinking it's a sus2 that he's moving against, that he's moving back and forth? Because I would have thought of it as a sus4 triad that you're moving back and forth against the E and the bass. Did you see it as a sus4 that you're moving, or were you seeing it as a larger extension of the E like you described a moment ago when you first kind of started playing the chords?
I think, well, technically speaking, I was fascinated by breaking the rule of parallel movement. There's that book on 20th century or 18th century counterpoint. I never returned to the library, so I still have it. And so when I moved out to Berkeley, California, I brought the book with me for some reason, and so every once in a while I pull it out and I'd read it, and I'd read through these rules. One of them fascinated me. For a kid who grew up playing Black Sabbath, to see a rule that says make sure you never do parallel fifths. I'm like, what? That's my whole life is parallel fifths, right? So I enjoy just coming up with chord progressions and fingerings that challenged everything that I heard on the radio, everything I had in that book and other books that I had on music. And so I could sit around and play for hours being that outside guy and just thoroughly enjoy myself and realizing this is never going to be hit songs, it's never going to be on the radio. I don't care. And I remember the second that I came up with that chord progression, and I thought to myself, I truly believe nobody has ever played this before. And certainly no one is stupid enough to turn it into a song. Like maybe somebody played it and went, well, throw that away, But typical of me to listen to it and go, okay, write that down right away, Joe, and write down right below that chart what it is that you're thinking of. And so a lot of songs get started that way, where I'm having an instant moment of two things happening. There's some kind of musicianship happening in my head that I'm unaware of. I drive myself to play something that I think is completely unique and different harmonically, and at the same time it arrives with some strange story, something I made up or a memory of something that I hadn't thought of in years, and I put that all down on paper. If I'm near a device that records sound, I'll record it and speak into the recording to remind myself, remember, this is a song about when this happened or that person or that kind of thing. And I never, here's the important thing. I never think it'll never be on the radio. I never think I'll never be able to write a melody to that. I never think the guys in the band will never like it. That's one thing I learned in all the years of being in bands in high school, is just forget about that, because that leads to total frustration. And in fact, bands are better when they don't listen to each other and they just keep bringing contrasting ideas in. And it's in the struggle and the fight that great records are made, if you've got lots of composers in a band. But as I was embarking on a solo career at that time, The only person I had to argue with was myself, and I didn't see the point in that. So I just said, this is the craziest thing I'm thinking of right now. I have to pursue it. And well, there's a whole other story about the title and everything, but I know my segment's very short because you have important, exciting people waiting to jump on this show.
Well, they're actually 1 minute late, but that's okay. I'm gonna wait. I kind of looked up like, where are they? There we go. Hang on a second. Let me pull myself out of the picture here. No, let's pull myself out of. There we go. Fluff is ringing through. Hang on a second. Let's get Fluff into the mix here. Fluff. There we go. Come on. There we go. Fluff. There we go. Come on. Now. Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, no. I didn't merge you. We've just dumped Joe Satriani. That is really flipping awesome. Hang on. Let me add him. Let me add him to the call. And gosh, that was really just kind of one of those moments that you'll never forget. And Fluff,
Yes.
it's completely. Let's see what happens when I. Okay, hang on a second. No, hang on. I want to add him to our call. Let me go back to this guy here.
Got to create a group.
Okay. Chats. Oh, this is the most awkward moment of my life. This is awesome.
No, just hang up and get Joe back on. It's all good.
Yeah, do that. See you. Bye.
Yep.
Hello.
Hey, I'm back.
Yes, that was the funnest moment of my life. Like, how do you actually dump Joe in the middle of a call? That's pretty good. Hey,
Well, I wrote a song, by the way.
Do I dare ask what the name of the song is and what it's about?
Doug put me on hold. Why? I don't know why. That's it. That's all I got so far.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. It was so easy to add people to a call last night. And now, there we go. Here we go.
I have my Aquavit.
All right.
It's not Aquavit.
Okay. Add to call.
There
we go.
To drink all on the internet, are you?
You can drink Aquavit if you want to. And then we're also going to add him. There we go. And we should have Fluff coming in. There we go. And there we go. And I'm going to add. Hey.
Yeah, look at that. A new person. Yay.
New people.
Joe Satriani, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Ryan Fluff Bruce. He is, first of all,
man.
He's kind of one of the greatest people I know.
Okay,
he's
stop.
Super smart. He's a brilliant musician.
Don't believe him at all.
Literally has just wrapped up a 9-label bidding war.
Yes.
He's and the funny thing is, Joe, last night you and I were talking about the difference between the internet side of performance and actually getting out and actually playing rooms and engaging people in the real world. And that's one of the things about Ryan is that he's a flipping slaying musician that loves to crank up amps and brutalize rooms with bone-crushing volume. But the great thing is, yes. But he's also...
All right, thank you guys. Thank you for having me. I'll see my way out.
But the thing is, he's also a super skilled engineer and producer. His record sounds amazing, and he's also got his own plugin.
Thanks, man.
With pleasure, because it's all true, and that's one of the best things. And he's a nice guy on top of it. Let me add Eric Klein here. Yeah, there we go. So let's see if I can add Eric and not hang up on Joe this time. It's so.
Well, opportunity to write another song.
So there we go. It's like.
Hi.
Hey, there he is.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Joe. How's it going?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Hey, Eric.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I'm going to suggest that you put on the headphones.
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Okay. All right. Hey, Eric.
Yeah, it's gone.
Thank you. That's okay. You're an echo imitating me about 20 minutes ago. So this is going to be one of those experiences where it's just going to be like, Awesome. So, all right. So we're hanging out with Joe. Eric Klein, another one of my favorite people. He is basically, what are you, chief product architect? Is that
Close enough.
He is basically
Product design architect, yeah.
He's the brains behind Helix, and just so much of what Line 6 is doing. He is an exceptionally brilliant guy. He loves to rock. He's just one of the funnest people to hang out with, and I'm super glad you're here.
You're
Welcome.
far too kind, my friend.
Well, it's all true. And now that we've lost both of our echoes, it's a lot better. So, Mr. Satriani.
Yes.
So,
bring back the echo.
We're gonna model that next, actually, the Skype echo.
The Skype.
Ooh.
The Skype echo. Hang on. Wait. Hold on a second.
That's all right.
Let's see if I can actually. Just 1 second. No, I wasn't quite as fast. So, Joe, one of the things that I did was I pulled out some of our old lesson plans, and in here, I should actually have the chart for echo.
Oh my God!
Now that actually wasn't in the lesson plans, but it's in. There we go. Let's see. You can't see it, but oh wait, hang on. I got to go over to. I'm going to go to ACAM for just a second, and I'm going to come back to you guys. ACAM is seeing the dimly lit chart for echo. There we go. Back to the BCAM split. So in a moment, we're going to do a drawing for the AXE I. We were finishing up with kind of this great conversation about modality and, that kind of the song, the story, and all of that. As one of the things that I've been working on that I'm really excited about is kind of working with students and helping them kind of have that same, if you will, the extension of the pitch axis, but literally being able to define from the flat 2 to the 2 to the flat 3 to the 3 to the 4 to the sharp 4 / flat 5, 5, flat 6, 6, flat 7, and the 7, and being able to just kind of have one of those tones against the bass note and go, hey, if it's a natural 6, all the things that it could be. So you could be kind of going back and forth between the 1 and the 6, and it could be the major, it can be the Dorian, it can be the Lydian, it can be the Mixolydian, and actually having that ability to interpret it harmonically on the fly, and another kind of, if you will, what I refer to as compound intervals. A triad is a compound interval that you've got the 1 and the 3 and the 1 and the 5. So you could arguably, when you see a major triad, even in the framework of another chord progression where the chords go together, and especially when you've got a chord progression where things are moving around, that is to say, it's a pitch axis where you're not just going, hey, when there's a 1 chord, it's a 1 chord, the 4 chord's a 4 chord, and the 5 chord's a 5 chord. Say, for example, you've just got a static A chord against an A and a bass. You can interpret it as major. You can interpret it as Lydian and interpret it as Mixolydian. And again, just kind of learning to kind of hear intervallically those individual scale degree numbers as they sit against the root. We never talked about that when I was a student with you, but the interesting thing in going through my lesson plans and the things that I was studying with you, I see, in many ways, kind of in the things that I've been working on and things that I've been sharing with people, the foundation of the stuff that the seed you planted and kind of turning into that. Do you ever play kind of interval games like that where you're kind of going, okay, I'm going to hang out with the 1 and the 5 or the 1 and the 6, and I'm going to reinterpret it all the different ways harmonically that I can and just toggle between those tonalities?
I don't think I ever start out in the theoretical state of mind, unless I've heard something that I like and I don't know what it is and I have to learn it. So a good example is the enigmatic mode. I heard it, I liked it, I didn't know what it was, I researched it, I found out what it was, and then of course it was so difficult to play on the guitar. It's just not fun to play, and none of the fingerings are good, and that kind of bothered me. So I just kind of worked it. And then usually what I do is I write a song or several songs based around it. But it's usually coming from an inspiration. It's as a matter of fact, I have to say, songwriting derails practicing for me. I'd probably be a better technical guitar player if I didn't waste so much time writing songs. But I tend to like writing songs, and practicing bores me to death. And also I think I think I mentioned this to you decades ago that technically people hit their wall really early, with the really outrageous physical attributes that they're going to develop. After the third or fourth year, if someone is going to be blazingly fast, and they've been practicing every day, they're going to hit it. After that, it may not sound good, but it be finessed or anything like that, but it's going to kind of be there. I don't think you can play for 30 years and then suddenly learn the secret to play twice as fast. Or your fingers are suddenly going to grow when you're 45 and you're going to be able to stretch like Alan Holdsworth or something. So I think that part of that really drives me to look at the musical value of the theories that have been organized by musicians before me, which really means chords, scales, and they wrote lots of songs. How did Puccini use the enigmatic scale? He certainly didn't do what I did with it, right? And then you can look at jazz players, you can look at reggae players, you can look at rock players, and you can see, well, everyone's using the Dorian scale at one point, but why are they doing it so differently? Those things are more important to me in musical development than the physical part. And then I think if you're sitting down and you're saying, I'm going to, as you said, hang out with the third and the sixth or whatever you're talking about, those particular intervals, I think for me, I get instantly bored if there wasn't an emotional connection to that exercise. If for some reason I heard on somebody else's record, that them hanging out with those two notes created this beautiful vibe, I might say, wow, I want to get some of that. It's sort of like when you hear, the first time you hear a Stratocaster and a Marshall stack turned up really loud going crazy, you go, oh my God, I want to get some of that. Not everyone has that reaction, but I did. So in the same way, when you hear some power chords, you go, whoa, what's that? Tony Iommi playing parallel fifths, breaking all the rules. I want to get some of that. So that attraction is really an emotional attraction. You see what I'm saying? And that drives a kind of sense of discovery that I think in the end is more rewarding, because you'll wind up, something original will happen from it. That's not technical based.
Awesome. As we wind down our first hour, we are going to give away an AXE IO, and I get to draw a winner.
Ah, cool.
So, Joe, would you care to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in that project and kind of what you like about it, actually love about it? Because and where was that Sammy's studio that video was shot in? Where kind of that promo video? Where was that?
Yeah, that was at Sammy's place. Yeah. Wow, how long ago was that? I'm thinking, boy, ever since the lockdown, I've lost perspective on like, what was that? Some other reality. Yeah, that was done at Sam's place because what we were trying to do in one afternoon was not only get introduced to some new parameters that were written into the software for me by the engineers at IK using Amplitude, but also to get familiar with the AXE IO. And I just didn't want to do it sort of at home like this, where I'm looking into a cam and, I just figured we should record it well. It should be in a studio. So at least we can show some more people working with it. In other words, an engineer next to me, assistant engineer out in the room, moving microphones, not using the microphones, just using the software, and just to show its flexibility. And that's kind of like how, that's why we landed there. And of course, Sam, he's very gracious, always lets us use his studio and abuse it anytime we need it. And then, so Mark Mangy actually reached out to me from IK a while ago and was curious if I was ever using the software. And I said, well, yeah, I'm using that all the time. I love to record DI. I'm using all kinds of software. And I said, as a matter of fact, I'm working on this record now, and the plugins are there, sitting there. So, so what's up? So he said they were interested in doing a Joe Satriani suite, of sounds from the early records and the new stuff. And I thought, well, that would be really cool, so let's get to work on it. So we have been working on it. The funny part about this is that you asked me that, and you're probably wondering, what kind of camera is Joe using right now for this streaming event? And actually, I'm looking into my laptop, but what is my laptop sitting on? It's sitting on the AXE box. So kids, it's not only a good unit, and it happens to be right over there, but the box is very useful for streaming. So it's a bonus. Let's just say that. So, and you do get the box, right? When whoever wins, they get the AXE, which is unbelievable piece of hardware, but you also get the box, which of course is, used for.
So it comes with a streaming box.
It comes with a streaming box. Thank you very much.
I love that. So let's see. I am hoping I'm going to pronounce Devin's last name properly, but Devin Hassenflu from Valley Stream, New York, is the winner of an AXE IO. So Devin,
yay!
Congratulations. I will be emailing you, and congratulations. That's awesome. So I know we're close to time, but Joe, if you're good with it, now that I've totally put you on the spot, I was wondering if Ryan or Eric have a question before you jet on into the night.
Okay. Yes. Ask away.
All right. I'm going to ask the hard questions.
Okay.
If you had to pick your most favorite student ever,
Steve
who would
I.
it be? And you've had a lot.
Oh my God. Well, besides Doug, of course.
Besides Doug. Yes,
that would be unfair. That would really be unfair. Just in case people are tuning in.
You don't have to answer that, by the way. I was just thinking and reflecting on like the amount of guitarists that you have given the world, and to music is truly incredible.
Well, tell people when they ask me about that kind of stuff, I really was a super lucky guitar teacher. Doug knows I taught, thousands of people came in that 10-year period at Secondhand Guitars in Berkeley, California. I was teaching a lot during that period. And some people really enjoyed it. Some people didn't care one way or the other, Some people, stayed for about a lesson or two and stormed out of that store in a huff because they hated my guts, because I don't know. I told it the way it really was for them. The fun ones, and there were more fun ones, were the kids who would come in and they'd have like a plastic toy and they put it on the amp, and then they pick up the guitar and they'd start playing something like, but can you imagine like an 8-year-old kid looking at a 20-something-year-old guy? I must have looked ancient to these kids, and they didn't understand why I played the way I did. And they tried probably not to break out laughing half the time. But I just love the fact that they would bring their toys into the little room and they do the lesson, and they do it really well. And they were always very polite and fun. And then they'd pick up their toy and they'd go off on their way. That was always fun. It was always fun to teach Doug, of course. He probably was the best student, but I'm not allowed to say that. There's some sort of legal streaming rule. But all of his cronies, his friends, his partners in crime, they were spread all over the stylistic map. It was incredible. When I would go back to a Squares rehearsal that night at 10 o'clock, and they'd say, you guys would say, what was it like teaching today? And it would be impossible to describe the amount of energy that I saw in Doug and his friends, and how I could see the future of music. And I knew that it wasn't me. I was already too old. They were going to bring something new to it. And it was exciting. I just always thought it was really exciting. And so I took it seriously. And so maybe I should apologize directly to Doug right now for any time leaned on you too heavy. But look at you now. You've got like so many pedals back there. Look at that. What is that?
I know, right?
Hang on a
It's
second.
like on the ground.
Hang on a second. I gotta bring up some evidence here. Hang on a second here. I gotta hang on. Let me switch applications and let me find the evidence. Hang on. All right, hang on. There we go. That's the plane ride to the Chicago NAMM show in 1986, and that's where you grilled me for 3.5 hours on harmonizing the Phrygian dominant scale in triads.
Did you learn it? Did it work?
You bet I did, because I had to ride back with you. There's the 3-octave scales. Look at that, 1980. Come on, review all what? Oops, edit that. Look at all this great stuff. No, here we go. Stop rushing. Stop unwanted hammer-ons. Stop playing with too much intensity. Stop sloppy with your practice. It's beginning to be a problem too big for me to solve. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Satriani.
Wow.
You know, so what he would do though, because I remember that one, and so he would because he was pissed. He was like, because the thing is he saw the potential, but he's like, what are you doing? You're a knucklehead, And so that one he wrote that and closed it in. Hang on a second. Switching to the ACAM. Here we go. In this binder. So this is after all these years, I've still got all these lesson plans, and they're like treasure for most of us. But the thing is that I'm sure I deserved it, and two, you closed up the binder so I couldn't see it, right? So it wasn't until I got home and I opened it up, or I was in the car, I was like, oh, because the thing is, the implication, even though it wasn't really true, was just like, if you don't get it together, there's not a slot for you anymore. Now, I know that wasn't really the case, but that's how it read. It's beginning to be a problem too big for me to solve. But the thing is that what that instilled in me was a sense of if you want it, you're going to work for it. And if you're not going to work for it, what I'm going to do, praise you because you did a crappy job on it? No, that's not how this thing works. And the neat thing is that, I may not have done necessarily all the things that I had envisioned in my 15-year-old long-haired juvenile delinquent self, but I've had the opportunity to do way more fun things than I ever would have done if I just kind of gone off and run around and been an idiot with a rock band. And so, Joe, I want to say thank you for busting my chops, because that instilled the sense of hard work that applies to pretty much anything I do. And that is great. As we're kind of closing out the final Satriani minutes, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for enduring, as we kind of got everything up on rails here and killing the echo. But really, you have, I'm actually going to say it. He personally walked my CD to Steve Vai and said, "Hey, man, I think you want to check this out." I may never have had that disc come out on Steve's label. Certainly, it doesn't hurt having Joe Satriani kind of go, "Hey, here's the disc. Check this out, Steve." That's a good thing. But you have been there consistently over and over and over. And the Dreamcatcher events thing, you walked me into that. Said, "Hey, Doug, come teach," and that has been the best gig ever. And it's just introduced me to people over and over and over and again. And I just want to say thank you, Joe. So thank you for coming tonight and for everything and all the hide busting. Don't lose any sleep over it. It was well worth it.
Well, great. Well, you deserve it, and you're welcome. And anytime. It's so cool. I wish I could hang out longer, but there's all this aquavit that I'm supposed to drink. Like there's a schedule I have apparently, and this is Doug set this up, so I'm going to do it. Very nice to meet you guys.
You too. Thank you so much for hanging out.
And good luck with Doug here, because who knows what he's going to start asking you now.
Oh, man. We're
Come on.
Yeah.
Thanks again,
All right,
Joe.
Doug, as
Thank
we
you, Joe.
discussed, when I say goodbye, I'm going to quit.
Okay.
I'm doing it right now.
Do it.
That's something Doug will laugh about later. See you guys. Bye.
Yeah.
Ciao.
See ya.
Bye. And we're still live. Hey, awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Okay, so we're here at part 2. And the interesting thing is I have every flippin' speaker muted, and I'm still getting messages giving me notifications. And the reason I've got browsers open is because I'm monitoring the stream here. So I do apologize for the beeping. So gentlemen, great to see you. So Eric, we're going to take a moment, since you didn't get a chance to pose a question to Mr. Satriani. We're going to kind of go back and forth here. The neat thing is we all kind of have some Line 6 stuff in common. Ryan is a Helixer. He's a rackhead. And today's kind of an important, celebration. What was it? Yesterday, 2.9 came out. So like people are all over the world are kind of, they've got new key ASCII commands that they can do with their feet and all sorts of exciting things. So Eric, why don't you tell?
That was 2.7 or something like that. Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about this release and kind of what makes it so exciting for you?
This is a smaller release than we normally have. We're just pushing forward, trying to keep adding new models, new features, new. Somebody used the term quality of life enhancements. I really, really like that. Anything that kind of bugs us in our day-to-day usage of any of our products, like that could be a little easier. We try to really shave down any of the hairy bits that keep people from cranking out guitar tones really, really quickly. So the Rev generator purple channel, everybody's really in love with. It sounds really great. The Kyle and the guys up at Rev are just spectacular to work with. They're always a lot of fun to hang out with at NAMM. A bunch of new effects. We added gain reduction meters on all the compressors, which is funny because everybody's like, oh, the compressors weren't doing anything because I wasn't actually compressing. I didn't have the threshold low enough. So now people are actually seeing what their compressors can do, which is great. A lot of little things too, like you can now update from HX Edit. And so the hope is going forward is you're just playing guitar, and now you don't have to spend all time online complaining about when the next update is on. You're just playing guitar. HX Edit goes, hey, guess what? There's a new update. Really? And then updates HX Edit, and then it updates your Helix, and you're done.
Question. So, I heard it actually forces you to do a backup, though, before you actually do, which is actually a great feature, such that you're not like, I've had applications that they force an edit before a save or an update, and you're like, so it hoses you mid. Oh, actually, I'm just going to go there. Pro Tools. If your Pro Tools monthly rent, your monthly thingy expires in the middle of a session, you lose anything that's unsaved before you refresh your authorization. What? Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. Oops.
I mean, let's be honest though. Anyone that still uses Pro Tools as a glutton for punishment is just used to that kind of thing anyway.
And so Ryan, welcome to the show. So why don't we segue over to you? And so speaking of, and Eric, we're going to come back because we got some Podgo to hop on here as well. Did I truncate you short, or are you good to hop on to the next bit?
Oh no, I'll just hang out all day.
All right, that's great. So Ryan,
yes sir,
you have you've got a new release as well.
I do. And I was gonna play it, but funny story. After all the beta testing, I realized I don't actually have the full version on my computers. I don't have the standalone. And Miko is somewhere in Central Europe, and it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm unable to get an NFR, so I cannot actually play the plugin. However, I did. I just had a signature guitar amp sim come out with ML Sound Lab. Who Miko's the guy who does all the cab models for the Fractal Axe effects and the Neural DSP stuff. And I use his IRs when I'm on tour with my Helix, and he's just a really nice, lovely, brilliant guy, and I can't say enough good things about him.
So
Ryan, great.
Ryan,
yeah, they're really awesome.
I'm sticking your amp over your face. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. I've got Eric too.
No, I cannot.
There we go. So what I actually I did download this, and thanks to you very much, I got kind of all your different presets and all your different amps. So I did not, in the midst of all the mayhem today, get a chance to run through that, but. So if you go over, it is ML Sound Lab. What is the URL, Brian?
It's like ML-Sound-Lab.
Okay.
But if you search just ML Sound Lab, it's the first thing.
And so you can download the one amp for free, and then and then you can buy the other ones. So what is your first of all, these are based on your personal amps. Nothing nothing for jazz in this batch. Joe was talking about that he had his distorted tone, wasn't necessarily a thing. So these are all your favorite distorted amplifiers.
The 4 channels from my 4 favorite amplifiers. Yeah.
Okay, so instead of me talking about it, tell us more.
The free amp is an EVH 5153 EL34 50 watt head. The one I've played quite a few of them of the variant 50 watt EVH stuff. Mine seems to have this kind of I don't know, like no matter what tubes are in it or no matter what guitar is going through it, like all of them sound fantastic. But my particular amp has this really noticeable bark in the upper mids. And I don't know what that's from. But it's just this, I have had people borrow it and rent it out from me, and it just sounds incredible. So I wanted to capture that. That's free forever. And if you upgrade the full plugin, basically you get the red channel from my 92 Rev F rectifier. I'm a huge rectifier nut. I love the boogie stuff. And you also get the channel 2 from my Friedman Butter Slacks. And then you get another 5150, an original block letter 92 5150 from PV, the red channel from that. And I did all the captures myself. I was really hands-on, and Miko was super, super cool. And I wasn't aware of how time-consuming it would be doing that kind of thing when I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Oh, my Lord. But I did all the captures. I took all the DIs from the amps and all that kind of stuff. And the plugin also comes with an IR of my Coffee Cabs Custom 212 with a V30 and Creamback mixed together. And I gave it the acid test, and initially I had said no. I didn't want to do a plugin because I thought, well, it's not going to actually sound like my stuff, because I would love to have a plugin that I can take with me while I'm on tour to write and get tones with. And Miko said, well, let's just do an A/B and we'll go from there. And if you don't like it, then just tell me to buzz off. And I actually ended up choosing the wrong. I chose the amp sim when I thought it was the amp. I chose wrong, and I had to eat my words. And so I said, okay, let's do a plugin.
That's pretty ingenious. I'm going to pull up the other Miko product here. I'm actually not going to play through it, but for those of you who are watching who are into this whole IR thing, what Miko has done, the guy's kind of like a total genius. And I apologize, guys. It's kind of blocking your guys' faces for the moment. So I'm going to block both your faces. Here we go.
My face isn't nothing to look at anyway. It's
well, actually, I tell you what, Ryan, I'm going to block yours so we can see Eric.
Cool.
So
No. Let's see Eric.
So what I'm doing here, Ryan, is that I'm dealing with that thing where you can, as you're creating basically your own IR, you can move the different microphones around. You can choose the speaker. You can choose which speaker it is in the cabinet. You can choose the microphone. And so basically, you know, in the process of having done all these things that Miko has done, and, you know, I've spoken to him a couple of times, and he's caught me out as I lost my mind with this plugin. Actually, he set me up with this. I did a demo with this at the Petrucci camp from one of the classes.
Yes. Yes. He mentioned that. He said to tell you hello, by the way. He's sleeping right now. But
well, tell him while he's sleeping, I'm singing his praises. And the whole thing that's interesting is you know, for those of us that love the sound of mics and amps and cabinets, and Eric, we're going to come back to you in just a second with this whole conversation that you and I had about PodGo and the kind of the different methodologies and the levels to go through. Sorry, Ryan, I'm going to stop blocking your face.
No. Oh, good.
So the thing is, what you can do is you can choose which mic, which speaker in the cabinet, because everybody ultimately, and it's usually, I think, the lower right, isn't it? That's the one. That, so there's no absolute reason that the lower right speaker should always be the one, but it just, for some stupid reason, is the one that sounds best. So the neat thing is that he gives you the ability to choose which speaker it is in the cabinet, and then start dealing with which microphones you want to blend, and then you can actually punch out your own IR. So, you know, the guy is a flippin' genius. And then, of course, you can bring that IR into where? Helix and PodGo. Hey, there we go. So
that was my initial attraction with the ML SoundLab stuff. It was those were the first impulses that I had ever seen that I could actually use in tandem with my Helix cabs and mix and match them, because there are good elements that I did like with the Helix cabs, but I like using multiple different cabs. And so I was looking for, a real specific V30 sound mixed with maybe the Helix Greenback, And his were the first I ever saw that you could actually mix both of them, and they were all in phase, and it sounded awesome. So
And
that was my initial attraction.
So Ryan, do me a favor before we actually no, Eric, why don't you before we kick it back over to Podgo, tell us about the definition of what phase is, because I have a feeling you have do you have an geekdom electronic engineer degree?
No, I went to school for 2 years for electrical engineering, and then I bailed.
Okay.
So, which is what I have to
Love
say. It's good, because if I knew any more about electrical engineering, I would annoy the crap out of all my coworkers, and So it's actually a good thing that I know as little as I do.
Well, with that said, I have a feeling you can tell us all about phase coherency and kind of why it matters, what it is, and what happens when it's right, and what happens when it's wrong.
Well, phase coherency isn't necessarily a good thing. Most of the time it is. Phase coherency deals with it's a biggest issue when you have multiple mics and they happen to be different distances from a speaker cone, or it could be a speaker that's wired out of polarity, which is perfectly that's not phase anymore, that's polarity. But if the time it takes for the waveform to hit one microphone is different from the time it hits another waveform, when the waveforms merge, they kind of cancel each other out in weird ways, and they're not cohesive. And if they happen to be the perfect distance apart, they can sometimes actually sort of cancel each other out and make things weak sounding.
So
that's the Reddit explain like I'm 5, I guess.
Well, no. Sorry,
go ahead.
I heard a pregnant pause, so no, I thought that was the opportunity for me to tell my most embarrassing demo story ever. So I had 2 SM57s. I had an orange cabinet, and I thought, this is going to be great. Ryan knows his story. Is like, it's like, oh. So and so the thing is that you anticipate that speakers are in phase, which they were, and you anticipate if you pull out 2 SM57s that they're going to be phase coherent. And I get an email from Alex at Orange. It's like, there's something wrong with the demo. And of course, at this point, it's gone live. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, you always collapse your mix to mono just to be sure. Mm-hmm. Don't be Doug Doppler. You'll regret it. And so, and Alex, like, there's no guitar. They're saying there's just drums and bass. And immediately, like, I know what that is. And my brain immediately goes, I know the speakers were in phase, and I know it's 2 SM57s, and I know I didn't flip, anywhere. I didn't invert the phase. And all of a sudden, I'm like, "There's no way one of the 57s is the polarity's reversed on it." And sure enough, I pull it up in mono, and I have a meltdown because it's a product launch. There are people like Ryan watching, and they're shaking. Yeah. They're shaking.
Was the 57 itself?
Yep.
Out of phase?
Yep.
Been repaired or something.
Took it apart and wired it differently.
It's in a plastic bag to never be used again. I know which 57 it is. I should burn it. I'm
guessing it was either repaired or it was a counterfeit.
I think it's a Chinese counterfeit. And oops. I shouldn't have said this. Well, okay. The reality is that it was probably made in China, which is why I'm saying it's a Chinese counterfeit. That is in no way a slight. I just want to back that up. So, but in any case, but that was like the worst experience ever in demo world. So, Eric, I was looking for an image of Podgo here a minute ago. But I started talking instead. In a moment, I'll pull up some Podgoism, but this is an amazing unit. And I'll also queue up a bass demo because I put, I don't know about you guys, but the B15N is one of my favorite amps ever, and you absolutely slay that. And one of the neat things is Podgo, and Eric, I'm kind of introducing your amp here, but the neat thing is it's kind of like a single processing chain Helix where you, instead of having the ability to run 2 amps and 2 cabinets, it makes you just really actually look for the essence of each of the things that are modeled. And I kind of went, you know what? I love this workflow because instead of my kind of doing all my kind of like, oh, I'm going to do my studio tricks and I'm going to bring the guitars in 30%.
It won't let you.
It won't let you. It is what it is. But what was really neat about it is I went, this is making me play the models for what the models are instead of using all the gadgetry, the good gadgetry, I'll add, that you get with Helix. And I was like, and first of all, $450. You've already pre-sold like 5 million of them, and another 15 million are on pre-sale already. And so it's been a brilliant launch. It's really cute. It's got little love handles, the sort of love handles that you actually like. So Eric, why don't you tell us about Podgo and your favorite things and kind of, let's go there.
Well, my favorite thing, can I say this, Fluff? Are Fluff's presets.
Oh,
what? You're just saying that.
No, they do. They sound great. I've actually had some people say, "What's the Fluff? Is that actually Fluff? Because it sounds really good." I'm like, "Yeah." Well, clearly, you're not hiding it because it's all caps Fluff. So if you have Podgo, check out Fluff's preset.
I made that on tour. Matt was like, "I need the preset, but like tomorrow," and I was like, "Well, we're gonna get the hotel in like 2 hours, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'll see what I can do." And me and our other guitarist Josh dialed it in on the spot with some headphones and monitors.
And it was actually kind of fun because we got a bunch of presets from a bunch of artists, and I had to manually open up HX Edit and manually build them in the hardware because at the time there was no editor for Podgo. So and then we had to do an A/B listening test to make sure, okay, it does sound exactly the same. And if I remember, I think I sent you and a bunch of other artists a white paper on, all right, so if you create a preset in Helix, it has to have this. It can't do this. You can't pick these models because they won't fit. And if you make a Helix preset, I will recreate it manually in Podgo, and that'll be our factory preset. And it worked out great. So
it was a lot of fun. I loved the parameters.
It was just brute force, late night kind of stuff. But
yes, it was.
Anyway, so Podgo. Everybody was wondering at the NAMM shows, like, why even do Pod anymore, and why call it Pod if it's Helix? And it's not really Helix because Helix is isn't an audio engine as much as it is a product line, and it would be dumb for us. And we've done this in the past. We've come out with less expensive versions and more affordable and more approachable versions, and to get the price down, let's use the last generation. Let's not put our best modeling in it. And we weren't willing to do that this time. We wanted to make sure that, all right, so if we're going to make concessions, if we're going to strip things out to get the price affordable and approachable for everybody, we're not going to compromise on sound quality. So we had to remove ins and outs. We had to remove some flexibility, remove some features, but we're really happy where it landed. And it took a long time to figure out because, Pod HD 500X was $499 for almost a decade. And it's like, how do you follow that up when everybody's assuming, there are all these table stake features like IRs and parallel paths and dual cabs and VDI and all of these things that sort of become like you kind of have to have them, and there's no way to do that for $499. So what do you do? And it just took us a while to figure out what to do, and that's where we landed.
Wow! And you added an expression pedal.
And we added an expression pedal. It has to be an all-in-one. So
sure.
The big thing was put a carrying handle on it. Anybody in the entire world, whether you drive a gigantic SUV in the US, or you have to hop on a subway in Japan, or you take the bus in Spain to your gig, however you get there, we wanted something that was super portable and super light, but didn't feel like a compromise.
It's anything but a compromise. So one of the things for anybody that is watching, listening, observing, first of all, we're going to be giving away a Podgo.
What?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. And first of all, again, a big shout out to everybody at IK Multimedia. Thank you for the support. A big shout out to my friends at Ibanez for supporting as well. Joe Satriani's team, the Line 6 team has always been, again, here we are. We're kind of like the Line 6 trio in our own way because,
Yeah.
I'm part of the development. I'm one of, kind of the beta testers on a couple of different things, and it's been a real privilege to be involved in kind of some of the stuff behind the scenes. So one of the things that I'm passionate about and is kind of educating people about how to use this stuff. And so, when we spoke the other day, Eric, we kind of talked about the kind of layers for somebody that's potentially moving into Podgo to start with. So do you mind if I recap and then you can kind of illuminate on that? So the first, and let's see, I'm going to go split. Ryan, I think we're going to lose you for a second. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Oh, that's even weirder. Let me just try and do a little something with this window. Hang on a second. Let me go back to you guys. Let me see if I can get this window to stack. No, it just gets really small. All right, well, that's better than nothing. Hang on just one sec. Getting there. All right, let's get us all in the same frame here. And there we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There we go. Hey, guys. So, gosh, I look very large compared to you. Awkward. All right, this camera. Hi. So, one of the things that was exciting about the conversation that Eric and I had is that I think we both saw the potential of all the people that are going to come into the Helix world because of this particular release. And, one of the things that as a gear demonstrator, and one of the things we're going to be doing on the show over and over is demonstrating gear live on the air. And so in so doing, there's going to be new gear. It's basically going to be a weekly new gear thing. And speaking of new, next week we're going to have Mark Lettieri, just in case you're looking for something to do Wednesday night, 7 p.m. And and we're also going to be giving away some Dunlop gear. So another reason to tune in. So, of course, Mark is a user of their stuff. Back to our previous conversation. So the thing is that, as you come into something like a multi-effects user, depending on, whether you're just starting out or all these things, it can be really overwhelming for some people. And kind of the heart and soul of the conversation that Eric and I had was like, hey, let's make this a really easy experience. So like if you've never dealt with the multi-effects unit and you've already got an amp, it's an amp that doesn't have an effects loop, then just use the kind of the front end stomp box style effects into your existing amplifier. And if you've got channel switching on that amplifier, you can use your drive pedals and your delays and your reverbs into the clean channel, and then you can switch on the drive, and then obviously that is to say the distortion in the amplifier, and then you'll potentially use your drives more conservatively. But the idea is to just kind of run out of pod, go straight into the front end of the amplifier, and make do with the way it is. And with that, I'm going to kick it back to Eric. So what's the next setup?
Yes. So you start out. I think I almost have to preface this conversation with the purpose for why we do these things in steps. So imagine you're just getting into digital, whether you're 16 or whether you're 45, and you're like, hey, I've heard some cool things about digital. Where do I start? And you jump online, and everybody's like, well, you got to buy this FRFR speaker, and you got to get this, and you got to get this. And it's really overwhelming because you end up having to buy all of this gear at once. But at the same time, it's a totally different experience than if you're used to using pedals and amps. So Doug's step one was, instead of buying all of this gear, you might start with a multi-effects unit, whether it's pod or whether it's Amplitube or whether it's any of these other, there are a million different products now that all sound great. If you treat it first and foremost as a multi-effects unit, going straight into the front of your amp, you kind of get a feel for what type of effects you like. And if anything, you might learn something about what kind of pedals you might want to buy in the future. So even if digital doesn't work out for you, you might learn, wow, I had no idea that I really, really liked the Klon, so I'm going to go buy a Klon clone. Or, wow, I thought I hated fuzzes, but this new Xenomorph Fuzz sounds really killer. What's that based on? Oh, it's this Sub-decay harmonic antagonizer. How do I even find that? You go track it down and you actually buy the original pedals. So it teaches you what kind of pedals you like, and it's not super alien because you're running it into an amp in the same environment that you're used to. So that's where we're at. So the next step is, if your amp happens to have an effects return or a power amp input, try running a modeler into that. So you're still using the same power amp and you're still using the same cab. But then what you can do is you can try out some of the preamp models that are in the modeler and see which ones you like. And you might say, hey, well, I had no idea I liked Vox amps. Voxes are great. This is what I want. And it might trigger you buying another amp down the road. But it allows you to go get a much wider variety of tones. And then do you want to go back to the next step? You want to do it back and forth? Or
I want to interject one thing.
Yeah.
Many amplifiers, when you go into the power amp return,
mm-hmm.
are post-master volume. So just be forewarned that it could turn into a very awkward experience if your guitar is up. It's the cacophony of loud,
when you do that,
crushing thing.
Yeah.
And I've got a road story. Hang on. I'm going to do a split screen, and what does it do when it does this again? Oh, great. Perfect. I got half each you. All right, hang on a second. Nah, you know what? I'm going to bail. This is going to be you guys. So I was, I don't know if my buddy Eamon is here from Ireland, but I was in Ireland. And so I was on tour with Gilby Clarke, and so I was using another brand's product at that point. So it was a Boss GT unit that I was traveling through Europe with, and so the gig was just running out of that into the power amp return out of what amp was backline. So that was what was in the writer, and so every gig I showed up, there was some amp with a power amp return that I could use. That's like that was my MO. So the mode 4, it's 5 minutes before the show. I'm the opening act I'm the support act. So I walk up onto stage, I plug in my thing, silence. And the interesting thing is that it's one of those things. I will. One of the things that I love to do as a musician, and this is a word up. Sometimes at my own expense, but in this particular instance, I learned a bunch of things tonight, and I will be taking notes about kind of that. And that's the great thing about these experiences is that collectively everything that you walk into, you have that collection of experiences, and you now know these things, and they're your little toolkit. So what I discovered, was that in that 5 minutes, and there's another related story here before we go into the amp styles, again. Was in that 5 minutes before stage, you're supposed to go on stage and you're having a major meltdown, you learn to think very quickly. There are no options other than to find a solution now. So I'm going to jump to the Floyd Rose story, and then I'm going to come back to the mode 4. So my guitar, I changed strings. Everything was cool. I get to the venue. It's in San Francisco. I was living in the East Bay. The guitar is either going markedly, it's going sharp. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm going to tune it flat. And so the trick with that, and this is the thing, a little tip when you're changing strings on a Floyd, generally speaking, whatever the amount the guitar is pulling itself sharp or flat by, you just tune each string the opposite direction by that same amount. And what happens is the guitar's desire to pull itself pull itself out of tune is actually the way it pulls itself into tune. And so had a great set, and 5 minutes before the set, I learned that trick, and that stayed with me ever since. In Ireland, I'm there 5 minutes beforehand. And I'm sweating bullets because I'm supposed to start. I'm the support act. I got 30 minutes, and if I don't start at minute 1, I got 25 minutes. Like, they don't give it back to you on the tail end. So I'm like, is it remotely possible that the effects loop doesn't work if there's not something plugged into the input of the amplifier? Yep. Yep. The one amp in the world.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, dude. So like, I just plugged an amp in. I plugged the cable into the front end of the amplifier and turned the preamp volume to 0, and I was good to go. But it was just one of those crazy things that happens dealing with effects loops. So if anybody tries to do this, the moral of the story is to bring it back here. If anybody tries to do this with a mode 4, you got to have something plugged into the input of the amplifier. Okay. So with that said. Eric, what's our next configuration here with post effects
So the
loop?
next step. Well, so the important thing is once you get to a place that you're happy with.
Yep.
If whatever modeler you choose going into the back of the power amp in, and it's not a mode 4 and it's working, sounds great. There's no reason to go to the next step at all. But we're going to go anyway in case you're not happy. So,
Yep.
So the next step would be to perhaps try 4-cable method, which if you're not familiar with that, what it does is it allows you to use, guess how many cables? 4?
3.
2.
3. If it's wireless, yes.
It's
3. So you run the guitar into the modeler, which effectively, and some of the blocks in the modeler will then be before the input of your amp. So you use a send from the modeler to the front of your amp, and then you run the send of the amp back into the return of the modeler, and then the main out of the modeler back to the power amp return. So what you're doing is you're running some of the models before the preamp section of your amp, and that allows you to run some other pedals between the preamp and the power amp section of your amp. And so you can pick where you want that to be. And because in the digital realm, you can move where that effects loop is, you can move where that separation between the sections of your amps are at any given time. Or you can say, guess what? I'm going to completely remove the preamp entirely from my real amp and swap it with a modeled preamp. And if you assign both to the same foot switch, you can toggle between the two with one foot switch. So what that lets you do is you can now maintain the sound of your real amp's preamp, but if you need a different flavor for something else, you can swap out something else immediately. So you get the best of both worlds. The story I like to tell is I've some friends that used to be in a Metallica cover band, and they used to rent JC120s, which are big and heavy, for half of Nothing Else Matters. So they'd rent amps for half a song, and it was exorbitantly expensive and complicated and stupid. And I finally convinced them, guys, just use this, do 4-cable method, hit one switch, and you can toggle straight between your Laney preamp and the JC120 model, and they couldn't tell the difference. They're like, oh, done. So little things like that. And then if you want, you can try wet, dry, wet, where you can start adding, some full range speakers and use those just for your wet effects type things. And then the last step is if you were to go, for full FRFR. The important thing though is don't keep pushing the boundaries and go, I have to get to the next step. Once you're happy, just stay there. And if you just like, you know what, I don't need to do amp modeling or cabs or IRs. I just want to use this as effects going straight into my amp because I love the sound of my amp. Stay there.
Which is how I started using the Helix originally. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Now, there is always a possibility. This is one of the things that I was watching somebody stream on YouTube, and I saw somebody make a comment, and it's Ryan. Actually, one of my favorite things that you've done, of many favorite things. In case you didn't notice, I wouldn't say I'm classic like a fanboy, but you know what? Like I love what you do, and I love the fact
Thanks,
that
man.
you're pretty frippin' fearless, and I love that about you. It's just like, and in the best sense of the word, you really just don't care. You care, but you don't
True.
care. Like it's a double-edged sword.
Not
You,
really.
you care about the important stuff because you're a quality dude. But the thing is, you're actually just kind of like, you know what? I don't care. It's like if you have a problem with it, I don't care. And so the thing is that the cheapest guitar on eBay, Reverb,
Yeah.
Amazon. And so it was a comment that somebody put, and it really kind of it struck a nerve with me. It was like, you guys only demo the expensive stuff, and I was like, ouch, that looks a lot like me. And I was like, so which is one of the reasons PodGo is so, I'm so excited about it. I'm going to do a bunch of content around that because I love the idea that there's a bunch of people out there that are just coming into this thing, and it's really easy. I got a bunch of stuff around here, but it's really easy to just kind of go, oh, everybody, because if I'm not careful, I start talking to the people that I think are quote unquote my peers, and that's really
Right.
dangerous because and the thing is that in the back of my mind, as I'm kind of looking over here and seeing, oh, there's somebody's name, there's a conversation that happens when you're thinking about pure talk. It's a natural part of this business, whether it's boss and line 6, whether it's somebody else that is in the streaming content creation thing. It's nice to always look. I mean, when you have a neighbor, at some point or another, you're looking over their fence just a little bit. They got a new tree, whatever it is that's happening. We're curious, and there's nothing.
Is that a Briggs and Stratton on that mower?
That's right. Actually,
Right.
hang on a second. I got to do a little something here. Just one sec, okay? I'm going to take that as a segue. Just for a quick second, I'm going to come back to this.
Do it.
So one of the things that we're going to do, and tonight is not necessarily going to be a playing night, but this right here, and Ryan, you're looking at a different screen here, so I think you're monitoring live. Are you on Facebook or are you on YouTube there, Ryan?
I'm on Facebook.
Look at you. So this right here is the rarest of the rare. This is an Ibanez. What are you? This is the cornucopia. So this is
wow.
Yeah, there were 3 models, the 2408-1, 2, and 3. And I think this is the -2. And there's a dragon, and then there's the other one. But the cornucopia has got these very strange pine cones. So the funny thing is the story behind these guitars is that, and you can see the old spaghetti logo there. So this is obviously a lawsuit era guitar. So the awkward non-introduction is there's always going to be something from Doppler's Vintage Vault. So I have a huge vintage Ibanez collection. And so what I wanted to do for tonight was pull out something that nobody's ever seen pretty much. And like you'll never see one of these in person because generally speaking, people don't take them out. The tops begin to, and I've got the air conditioning on here, so it was probably like a freshman move to bring it down here. But what happens is that I can't give you a super close-up shot, but I can. There you go. You can see that. So you can see the laminated top there, and then it's carved. So the story is, sorry, I'm moving away from the mic, that they sent them over to China for some reason to have them carved, and then and so the story of this guy is I spent a number of years scouring the globe looking for these. So I have 2 of the 3. And this one came from South Africa. So there's the equivalent of eBay in South Africa. And I found this thing, and I've got photos of me going and picking it up at customs at the San Francisco airport. So it's, it's kind of the neat thing is that,
Wow.
yeah, right. So it's as a gear collector, the part of it is the hunt. Like behind me, there we go, is the walk collection. So right around the same time I was putting together the walk collection, I was also putting together the Ibanez collection, and it's just neat to, Ryan, hang on a second. I don't have this in this bin. I'll find the photo while we're on this Helix thing. But are you going to pull something up?
Me?
I thought you were going to do a screen share there for a second.
No.
So the interesting thing is segueing back to, and this guitar was like about $2,000 at the time. It's probably worth $5,000 or $10,000 to the right collector because you just can't find them. And unfortunately it does not have the original bridge pickup. I'm nearly positive the neck and middle pickup are original, and it's it's in shockingly good condition. These are the original tuners, and just kind of a crazy piece. So
Wow.
getting back into this pedal thing, and let's switch back over to you guys here. The interesting thing is that I think it's really easy to not even be a gear snob, but just kind of go, hey, these are the tools of the trade. And I had an interesting experience this afternoon because I knew that I had enough things that I needed to manage in the process of the stream that I thought, okay, I'm not going to probably play tonight. Invariably in the last segment, we're going to talk about modes and talk about theory and kind of geek out, and I'm going to get in the weeds with people. But the thing is that what I wanted to do was really, again, pull out some of this gear and also be conscious of the fact that we want to speak to a range of people. So zooming back to this kind of whole, we're starting out with this modeling thing. What pedals would you say, if you're just getting Pod Go, and you're running into the front end of the amplifier, where would you start? And mind you, kind of tell us a little bit about unfolding the actual pedal that you would have used, why you used it. It doesn't have to be expensive, but that. I also, before I forgot to tie off that one little piece, coming back to it and then coming back to the pedals. I played one of my less expensive guitars, and I actually could feel the difference on that instrument. So it's an interesting thing, because one of the conversations that maybe we'll loop back to that after I loop back from this is that, you know, Ryan, I've played your guitars.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
One of the best guitars that I've ever played, and a really great guitar actually makes you play better. And it was really interesting kind of going, oh, there's certain sounds I can't get out of this particular instrument that I was playing. I was like, oh, interesting. So there is something to be said about you get into a certain price point and an instrument is able to deliver certain things. But the thing is, that said, I played plenty of Squiers that are flipping awesome. I played lots of cheap Ibanez's that are great. So looping back, like I promised I would, the kind of the, hey, I'm just starting out. I know this pedal. I'm familiar with a Tube Screamer. You know, I don't necessarily know what a Prince of Tone is. What are some of the pedals you would suggest starting with, even if it is the Prince of Tone, as you're kind of going, okay, hey, for anybody that's out there or that's either watching this now or watching it on the restream, as we repurpose this, what kind of like pedals that somebody's going to be familiar with? You're saying, hey, just look for these models, start with them. These are the common colors. Start with that, gentlemen.
Eric, go ahead.
Well, assuming that your amp has both a clean and a dirty channel, I might start with a delay. Because when I started out, I ended up playing a lot better if I was able to kind of lock into the rhythm of delays.
Oh, interesting.
And it also makes sure it has a tap tempo on it if possible. And it taught me timing, and it taught me, and I almost used it as a metronome of sorts.
Interesting.
There's always the standard wah. I mean, you could talk like Boss DS1 as a great distortion pedal, but if you have a good dirty channel, it may not be the first pedal you need necessarily. But
agreed. I would choose a Tube Screamer only because when I was a kid, so we read, me and my friend Mark read in a Guitar World that Kirk Hammett really loved a Tube Screamer in front of his Marshall, and we didn't grasp the concept that the Marshall was already probably roaring, right? We thought the pedal was doing that. So we saved up our collective money and we got a Tube Screamer. We were horrified. It did not sound like Enter Sandman at all. But they don't explain that stuff. I would get one or I would bring that up to understand how it interacts with the rest of the potential signal chain. I would do a delay. I really like phasers. I love phasers. It was the first pedal I ever bought was from my uncle. Was what I didn't know at the time was a 2-knob Boss PH1 with a silver screw. First edition, super rare. It was mint, and I traded it away like an idiot.
Wait. Let's back up. Let's talk about silver screw and black bottom and all of that. Can you define that for those that are not in the geeky pedal know?
A silver screw Boss is a very early Boss. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, Doug, but it was very, very early in the Boss production. It was probably made. It was made in Japan. There were small variants early in the production.
Keep going. I'm going off screen for a second. I'm not disappearing.
No problem. And in particular, the Boss phasers started with the PH1, and I believe there was a PH1A, which added a third knob, and then there was a bunch of variant phasers. But what I found out years later, was the earliest and extremely early Boss PH1 that honestly was probably one of the first few hundred made ever. And I traded it away. But I would add a phaser, so drive, phaser, delay. I don't know. I never use flanger that much. I never use chorus that much. I don't know. I wasn't ever that type of player. I guess it would depend on what you're listening to, like who your influences. Like if you're an Edge fan, yeah, you're gonna go nuts with the delays and the choruses and the verbs, and the reverb would be a cool one, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, that's just one of the. I mean, if you're starting out, that's one of the advantages of getting like even if it's like an affordable Zoom multi-effect or something like that, just the ability to go through 60 or 70 effects to figure out what you like and what sort of locks you in, and you're like, oh wow, I really like what you do.
You are a madman.
I'm back. Hang on. Let's see if I can do the split screen, and I'm going to take you guys small for a second. This is just a little too hilarious. Hang on a second. So I was like, oh wait, hang on. Let's do this. I'm going to pull you in. So hey, by the way, anybody is wondering why I'm doing all this stuff? We agreed that we were going to do this via Skype, and so I'm actually my personal preference. Sorry, get on the microphone. Is I'm a Zoom guy, but just kind of for the convenience of it. There we go. Magic. That's it. So so the funny thing is that one of the conversations, and one of the neat things about this is that I've had a chance to hang out with everybody here as we kind of prepped for this. So one of the conversations that Ryan and I had was he was saying, it's like, hey, I'm a drive pedal collector. So as I was looking for the right Boss DS1, I kind of started going, oh, wait a second, I've got a couple over there, and I was like, well, which one is it? So, black screw.
Yep.
Black bottom. So this is this is part of the mojo. So the silver screw came before the black screw. Is that correct?
Silver screw is the very earliest variants.
So the black, as opposed to the silver bottom, there we go. That's the fashizzle. And generally speaking, the black bottom, black screw should sound pretty consistent with the the silver screw. And the thing is that basically the short story is that if people were still making these pedals as they made them today, if the people who made these pedals hadn't made them, they would probably still be alive because of the copious amount of lead that was in these pedals. You actually can't make this pedal even in China anymore because of the lead contamination. But the circuitry in this is magic. So the interesting thing is, and I didn't really get a chance to ask Joe about it, but this pedal is the essence of Joe Satriani. Like if you listen to the JVM 410JS, it's this. It's the essence of this early pedal. And the point being is that that's a really special box. Sorry, I had to geek out there and just kind of pull out the vintage DS1. So, Ryan, back to you, sir.
Yes, sir. I would really love to get a DS1. No, me and Eric were talking, or an old vintage DS1, excuse me. No, me and Eric were talking about the fact that it would depend on, going back to the question of what would you choose in something like the Pod Go to start with. I guess it would depend on who you're listening to and who your influences are and who you want to sound like. And the fact is, the world is at your fingertips. Unlike when I started playing in the summer of '94, multi-effects units were a thing, kind of. They were the two pedal Zoom things where you have to scroll through a menu and save your preset, and that was it. So stop boxes were all I used to look at the AMS catalog and the Musician's Friend catalog. That was all I had as a kid. So I ordered my first distortion pedal, which was a DoD Supra distortion FX35, and that was it. That was you couldn't do the things that you could do even now, even with the most inexpensive $99 multi-effects unit today.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's
and even
really
if you treat it as a learning tool to find out what you like.
Yeah. Never had that before. You just go and pester the American music guy or the Ted Brown guy and have your mom drop you off for 2 or 3 hours with your friend and go through all the pedals and try them. And Yeah, I'm deciding which one I want to buy. Wink, wink. I ain't gonna buy nothing because I'm broke. So, that was my reality back then. So I can't even imagine starting playing now with all the options. It'd be option paralysis, honestly. But
Yeah.
it'd be insane.
No, we get requests from people. It's like, hey, can I just remove the things I don't need? Like,
No.
or why don't you make a box that just has 4 really great amps? Like, well, I mean, Strymon did it with 3, and and their box is selling really well, so maybe. But we already have 80, so how do we pick the 4? Who's gonna agree?
Yeah, you're never gonna satisfy anyone, or everyone. Excuse me. Yeah.
As we talk about PodGo for a second, I would like to take and actually it's back there. And part of my brilliant plan for tonight was I wonder if I can do this. Hang on a second. Let me see what happens when I do picture-in-picture here. Okay, give me a moment. Let me just do one thing here, ladies and gentlemen. Scene edit. You guys are on 2. So scene edit. Okay, picture-in-picture. Scene, yeah. Edit. Oh, come on. Edit. There we go. All right. No. All right. Oh, so much for editing on the fly. Epic fail. Okay. There we go. So I'm still small, but that's okay. Let me go back to this blend over here because that was actually kind of working. Hang on. There we go. And so one of the things that I really, really love about the workflow, and I apologize for anybody that's out there that was going to lack the visual workflow of it, but hopefully we'll do an articulate enough job talking about it, is that in the menus of PodGo, you can set it up so that you can easily toggle between, hey, I want to bank up and down between presets. I want to hang out at a group of presets and then toggle into the snapshots and be able to do that. And what I loved about was, first of all, my buddy Andrew Bonica, who at some point is is going to feed us some questions, and also is at some point I'm sure going to make multiple appearances on the show. But he's really been on me about making sure that you don't just know it from the editor side, or don't just know it from the interface side. And so, what I really kind of I'm a deep editor guy. I love to sit inside the editor and move stuff around because honestly, you get to be my age, you can't see things as well as when you were younger. So, but what I loved about it was from the face of the unit, it was very easy to be able to toggle between the modality of going, hey, okay, we're going to use the ability to toggle between 4 presets. You step on the mode button, you now have access to the 4 snapshots inside them, in turn defining what a snapshot is and how all this works. So imagine you've got a bank of 4 presets, and then you can get inside any one of those presets, and in turn you can create 4 variations of the things that are on or off that you want to have inside that preset. The reason you want to do that is when you switch from preset to preset, if you've got a delay and it switches from one delay to the other, or even if it's the same delay, there's a moment where you have no spillover. And what you can do inside the snapshots is you can even bank up and down. And what is it called? Transparent mode, where you don't hear the ramping up and ramping down?
Oh, you mean with the delay trails?
Oh, with the delay itself.
Yes.
The delay trails? There's transparent mode and authentic mode. Transparent is transparent is fake. It's not like a real analog delay pedal.
But what's so cool about it is one of the things we were talking about was Brian at Worship Tutorials had created this great snapshot functionality. He was controlling multiple things associated with one foot switch. Let me back up a step. So the great thing about the different snapshots is that you can have different things turn on and off. And say, for example, you want to go from you have your tube screamer into the front end of your Marshall. And then you want to, within the same thing, just step on another snapshot, and you want to have the tube screamer turn off. And then maybe you want the delay on one of them. And then when you switch over to the one where the tube screamer's off, maybe you want the delay to turn off, because that's kind of your rhythm tone. Well, what you can do within a snapshot is you get the spillover of the delay, which you don't get when you change presets. So that's one of the biggest reasons why snapshots are going to happen. So again, let me just recap. You've got a preset. If you switch from one preset to another, you won't have delay spill over from one into the next. Inside snapshots, even if a delay turns on and off, you can have it spill over and kind of finish the end of the delay trail, and it kind of makes this nice little dovetail as you go from a wet sound to a dry sound. The other thing that's cool about that is that with the transparent mode, if you can also set it from one snapshot to another, you can actually have it such that it's a different delay tempo. Of, say, for example, you've got it like your tempo's changing in the song. Maybe there's some sort of metric modulation, and you want your delays to change to a different subdivision. What you're able to do is do that, and when the transparent mode, the delay speed will actually change within the same preset. Delays keep going, but in the non-transposed, authentic, is that?
Authentic.
Yeah,
so
you hear the delay kind of go, and honestly, it's for me, it's a really unpleasant sound.
I love it. I love it so much.
Too.
Oh,
yeah, awesome.
I hate it. I'm just like, because it's one of those things. The reason I hate it is like it's distracting. You're like, what was that? Because it's not musically relevant to whatever it was that you're playing. And
Doug, I have whole songs that are nothing but me messing with the time and feedback knobs on a DL4, and like that it is, and I'm actually playing the feedback that oscillating pitch.
Sure.
I'm actually making harmonies of the guitar with the expression pedal in real time, and that all those weird pitch fluctuations become the harmony of the guitar. It's so fun. You gotta try it.
No,
I'll show you next time you're in LA.
Please do, and I look forward to it. And that I love. Like there was a lesson that I had with Joe where I came in and he had a DM2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why don't you just mess with effects? And so we basically spent an hour of him messing with getting the delay to regenerate and all that stuff. So yes, and yes. So the point being is whether you want authentic or non-authentic, the ability to have that functionality inside the snapshots is great. And
well, there's another big advantage of snapshots that a lot of people don't talk about. And that is if you treat each preset like it's your entire rig, like I have all these pedals in this specific order, and I've picked this specific amp or these groups of amps in larger products like Helix. If you're performing live, even if you have a million techs running around, you're not going to throw your pedals out, bring all new pedals in, and hook them up in different order to go from the verse to the chorus. You're going to want to actually turn certain pedals off, turn other pedals on, and you want to stay within the same rig, typically within the same song. If you're in the studio, you can do all sorts of crazy things, but when you're playing live, you're playing within the same rig at once. So if you try to have different presets for different sections of your song, just the different tonalities of the different groups of pedals that you've chosen for that section can be really jarring. So it's not just the gap that you get from unloading and reloading the DSP, it's the actual choice of pedals that you would have when you have completely separate presets. So snapshots kind of bring you back to earth and allow you to have seamless transitions, not just without the gap, but tonally and I guess thematically in a way.
Word. Fluff?
I was going to say the same thing.
So, that brings us to this other point of kind of one of the things that Joe and I had talked about last night was that there's kind of a paradigm shift for there are the live musicians, and then there are also the internet musicians. Ryan, you toggle between those two realities. One of the questions was, how did you kind of do what you did kind of from beginning to now? Can you kind of walk us through a little bit of the evolution and kind of, what the intent of the different things you've done in the different phases? And again, let me just preface this for anybody who's jumping in. Ryan's band, They just basically had a 9 record label bidding war. They paid Ryan $50 million, I think.
It was 40, Doug.
Oh, I'm sorry.
40.
I wasn't supposed to say. But so the band's called Dragged Under. I'm looking for the number of streams here. Was it 2 million or was it 10 million?
It was 2. Yeah, I think it's like 3.5 now, but
it's jumped to 3.5 since we talked the other day.
I mean total, like not just Spotify, but like iTunes and
I mean,
Google Play, and
that's a really good sign. So So and has the ink dried? Is it an official thing? Because we were talking that the ink was still drying when we last spoke. Is that now official?
Kind of. I am allowed to talk about it, so it's dry enough where I am allowed to talk about it.
All right. Well, first of all, congratulations. The thing.
Thanks, man.
I actually kind of committed that the cardinal sin was somebody was giving you a hard time. The one person that was giving you a hard time in the comments on a video, and because I am remotely known in internet circles, I was like, I'm gonna break the rule, but I was just like, he just said something kind of off color, and I was like, Arr! It's like, no,
I got all mad Papa Bear on him.
Oh, I kind of went off, and I said, by the way, his band is huge. They got like a bazillion streams, and they're about to be huge rock stars, and it's like actually, it's totally uncalled for you. It's just not cool. And what was interesting is I asked Ryan the other day, I said, did you take that comment down? Because, I kind of thought, I wonder if Ryan was embarrassed for me, because like, Doug, don't take the bait. And it was.
I don't remember deleting anything like that. I left it up. I did see it. I didn't delete it.
I think, and so I thought about it. I thought, I wonder if this guy actually took the comment down. And he just kind of went, "All right, I was being a douchebag. I'm sorry." And it might have just been the guy was having a bad day, right? And which we all do it. And mind you, on any honestly, on any day, if I would have taken the bait. Like, because it's the one thing I will never respond to. I will only respond to negative comments on my feed with nice replies. On my feed is if you're a guest and you show up someplace, like if somebody says, Doppler should have gotten that echo right at the beginning of the Satriani thing. I was like, you know what? Yep, I can take it on the chin. Like, the great thing about some of these comments is there's actually truth in them. And I'm down. Sure. Like, if somebody's going to tell me the truth, I'll take that on the chin. But the thing is that it's when somebody's just being mean, that's not okay. And being an online bully is just not okay. So now then I get to be the opposite. I get to just kind of, I get to fluff your beard here, Ryan. So the deal is that you're one of the nicest guys I know.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. You have a huge impact on social media, and now you've got a band that is about to just explode in the non smell the glove kind of way. The songs are amazing. The arrangements are amazing. The guitar playing is amazing, and like you're about to step into a completely different phase of this career. So with that setup, can you walk us through kind of like the evolution? And in some ways, my guess is where you're at now is really where you wanted to start at, but you kind of had to go through all this stuff. So in the midst of unpacking that, you can talk about how some of those things prepared you for what you're doing now in unexpected ways.
I mean, I started, I was playing in bands in high school, and I started playing in '94. I was playing shows, like really rowdy, hardcore political punk rock shows, right out of high school. And then had my daughter. And then I moved down to California in 2005, where I ended up being homeless. But we were recording at Sound City, which is a big famous studio, and ended up being homeless, and then hightailed it back home after a year. And then I got a normal day job, and I worked at Boeing, and then got divorced, lost the Boeing job, and decided to go all in on the YouTube thing. I never, ever thought in a million years I would play live again. I hadn't played a show in a decade. And the last show I played before all of that was, 2005. 2005 would have been the last time I played a show. So that was all just not even a thing on my radar. And then the YouTube thing started happening, and then part of my videos, I write these really short songs to demo whatever I'm making a video of, and that kind of naturally progressed into maybe I wanted to do a band. And then my buddy Jared Dines, who at the time was just kind of getting off the ground with his YouTube thing, was like, hey, we should take some of these songs and do a band. Let's do a band. And I was like, that's ridiculous. They're like, that's such a kid thing. But we did it. And that ended up being a very cool endeavor. We toured all over the country for several years while doing the YouTube thing full time. And then that kind of collapsed and just came to an end. And then we formed Dragged Under. And then we wrote some fresh songs that we just wanted to hear ourselves. It was for nothing more than just ourselves. And then a lot of people ended up liking the songs. And so here we are a year later, exactly a year later, actually. And we were in the studio, stuck in a studio in a snowstorm. Actually, Mr. Brian Lash is watching on Facebook right now. It was his studio we were stuck in, and yeah, it was very, very cool. We just got we ordered a bunch of energy drinks and Thai food, and recorded the record. It was crazy.
Well, it's one of the best. I mean, the thing that I was struck by. So Ryan, you were a presenter at the Tom Morello camp, and I had the privilege of doing a reamping class with you. I mean, one of the things that I love about you is your recording studio prowess is flippin' wicked, dude.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, no, it's like, and everything you do, honestly, your production thing, because as we kind of talked about, you're not only a guitar and a guitar gear geek, you're a camera geek, and that's
love cameras.
Hey, you're noodling there. Are you gonna give us some sound there?
No, dude. So earlier when you were talking about theory and stuff, I was like, I have no idea what you're talking. Eric, I don't know if you're a theory nut, but I am not a theory nut. I don't know what I'm doing.
But are you gonna play anything? Okay, all right. No.
My chord's over there. Anyway. No, I will not play something right now.
All right. So first of all, since you're holding that guitar, and have we concluded from the humble beginnings to the present, pre-mega rock star status? So okay, stupid question.
Sure.
But I gotta ask because I've never been able to ask this. Okay, so the money's about to come, right? Like I heard when Flea got signed, what he did is he went down to the Mercedes-Benz dealership and was like, "I want that one." So
okay,
is it going to be like a vintage DS one? What do you,
no.
Is there anything?
Those days are over, my friend.
No,
yeah,
they had
doesn't happen anymore.
They had a 9-label bidding war. Those days happened for him, and dude, I love that because the thing is you're a humble guy, and more importantly than that, in addition to that, I should say, you worked your butt off because the thing is that the video world is like for every hour of edited video, it's 10 hours of work. So, you've put in the long hours. So that said, is there anything you're like, what, I kind of, I mean, it's a stupid question, but still it's kind of fun. Is there something you're like, what, I want to get to because I want to remember the moment?
I've always wanted to get, and I, it's in Thailand, so I'm probably not going to get it. And it's a lot of money. I've always wanted to get a Les Paul custom from my birth year. So there's a Tobacco Burst Les Paul custom from 1980 on Reverb right now for like $3,500. I'm like, oh, and it's like mint, and it's just unbelievable looking. But a guitar from my birth year would be super cool.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I hope that guitar finds you. That would be really, really cool.
It's a very old guitar, so who knows? I don't even think guitars existed back then or survived that long because 1980 is so long ago. So.
It's not that long ago for some of us, Ryan. That's okay. Still living the dream. Speaking of living the dream, I'm going to ask you for a second, Eric. Let's jump over to you. You work in an industry right now that's kind of an awkward little moment in retail with everything that's going on, and first of all, let me back up and just say there are a lot of people that are hurting. And if there's anybody here who's watching, and invariably somebody that is watching is kind of like, I'm going through it. So it's not just an awkward moment in retail. It's actually there's a lot of tragedy. And I'm insulated because I'm kind of here in this room doing what I do. And I'm very fortunate and very blessed and very aware of that. So in some ways, I don't. I'm sheltered from what's going on. But the other thing is because I'm involved in the industry on a couple of different levels. I also kind of only see things to a certain extent from within that bubble. So as somebody that's in this industry and in this moment in this bubble, but at the same time with the bigger framework of kind of where you've been and kind of what you've done, Helix is one of the most iconic pieces of gear of our age. Like you've had an integral role from soup to nuts of creating something that has changed. I mean, go on, Chad Boston's group, go on. You can't go into a church and not see a Helix or not have seen a Pod HD 500. Line 6 has played an integral role in the crafting of the guitar experience. So what's it like kind of, being there must be a perspective about being on the inside of your particular corner of the guitar universe. What's that like? What kind of is the experience of being Eric like?
Oh man. Just before this, I got off the phone with my sister. It's her birthday. And she works for a very, very large promoter, and they are talking about not having any concerts coming forward for the next, until next fall, which is really tough. And we have a lot of friends at a lot of different companies, and everybody likes to, manufacture drama between different modeler builders or amp builders, and it's not really the case. I mean, we're in a fortunate position where we have somebody like Yamaha who has our backs. So we're not too worried about it. They've told us that that they're watching everything closely, and if anything gets too bad, that we're not going to have to start shuttering doors or letting people go and that sort of thing. I will admit that the executive staff purposely silos me from a lot of that stuff. They don't want that stuff in my headspace, and I thank them for that. I feel remarkably lucky to have a company like Line 6 to work at, especially since I like to tell this story, but I used to be at Roland, and I remember not learning about the gear until about 2, maybe 3 weeks before the NAMM show. So we had 3 weeks to find out what the gear was, how it worked, what's going on, and then you had to demo it and you had to explain it and show it at the NAMM show and that sort of thing. And on the first day at Line 6, they brought me into a room and they said, "Hey, all right, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to talk about all of the gear we're making over the next 3 years." And I'm like, what is happening? I shouldn't be in here, and it's really cool getting all of the weird little secrets and knowing where we want to go. And Helix has been successful enough to where the organization tries to stay a little hands off. But the world impacts us in many, many different ways. And so it was very fortunate that we have something like Pod Go that's a lot more affordable, because we're heading into a recession, and we need to have stuff that the masses can embrace. And we've seen a little bump just because everybody's creative side is coming out with this with the quarantine, but we're in very close contact with our friends at other companies. They have questions on the tariffs. They have questions on taxes and payroll stuff, and we're all kind of in this together, trying to make sure that our industry can at least weather this and hopefully maintain this sort of stuff. And we're trying to figure out what we can do for musicians going forward, because a lot of musicians are not. I mean, they're hitting hard times. Composers, I have a lot of composer friends where a lot of stuff is dried up. So we're just kind of all in this together, trying to make sure we get through it and be better for it in the end.
That's awesome.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it's because there is going to be an end, and we are going to be better for it. And what do you think some of the big lessons that we've learned in the industry are? For example, we've spent so much money on commercial real estate that we've discovered that working remotely, You don't spend an hour in your flipping car in LA. I've lived in LA a couple of times. And for example, line 6 is in a relatively high bracket financially. To live close to that facility, it's going to cost you. And so it means that, especially for somebody that's potentially coming into the company at the entry level and working their way up, they're going to have to drive through an hour and a half of traffic potentially to be able to afford to live in Los Angeles, to afford to work their way up, not because of the pay at line 6, but because of the fact it's that expensive to live out in Calabasas. So
no, it is. And I don't know if anybody actually lives in Calabasas. I'm on the other side of Calabasas. I'm in Woodland Hills. A lot of line 6ers are in Thousand Oaks and Simi Valley, and we have some people who drive up. I think Ben lives in close to Silver Lake, so he has a good hour and a half every day each way. But what's nice is that at least half of 2/3 of Team Helix are remote anyway, because we have a lot of software and firmware engineers, and so to attract the best firmware and software guys, we kind of have to allow them to work wherever they want. It's a lot tougher to do if you're an electrical or mechanical engineer. You have to be on site. So as we start bringing people back, they're likely the first group of people to go back into the building. So far, it's actually been pretty cool. We do everything on Microsoft Teams, and lots of emails and lots of chats and lots of phone calls. And we've released a product and we released a firmware update in quarantine. So if we can do it, if we can just keep this momentum going.
Again, it's a little awkward for me because I know that there are a lot of people out there suffering, and I'm not really around anybody that's going through a really hard time. So, I'm generally a really empathetic person, but because I don't have anybody that I know that's kind of, I know one person at a company got let go really early, like 2 people at companies that got let go really early. And I, of course, won't mention the people, and I won't mention the company, but it was kind of disappointing. Now, it may be that the company was like, hey, we're going to bring you back, and it's actually going to be to your advantage to do this. But one of them was really kind of came as a shock. I'm like, so it's interesting to see how that works. So in any case, anybody that's out there going through that, my heart is with you. And I just really, as much as we're excited about the gear that's happening, we realize gear is not the world. And so, so boom. Okay. Segueing back into the conversation, Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So I must admit, this is kind of a tutorial moment. Ryan, what was it? It was +4, as I recall. That was the setting that you had to set the HX Helix rack to be at unity gain with. I think it was the Boogie at that time. With the effects loop when you were
it's because boogies have line level. Some boogies have line level effects loops.
Yeah, so that was the Helix.
Right. So weird.
I have no idea why they do that. But
I don't know either.
Yeah. So but we also, the great thing about Helix is the reamping capability. So this little box here, we didn't have a chance to talk about it during Joe's part of the show, but this box got invented by John Cuniberti. Because they came back from a G4 tour, and they recorded in Japan, and they recorded live, and something happened with Stu Ham's bass tracks that they had the DI, but the bass amp, like it was unusable. And needless to say, it's a live recording, and it's Stu Ham. You can't really just say, "Hey, Stu, can you come back in and track that again?" Because just by the way, in case you don't know, 99.9% of any live recording you ever listen to is not live. Just I hate to burst your bubble, but it ain't that.
It's alive. It's not.
Yeah, no. So just like, so in any case, so the deal is the reamp was invented because they had a raw DI thing and they needed to run it back out into an amp. So John Cuniberti, being the genius that he is, besides being Joe Satriani's engineer and producer, and now he was actually the mastering engineer on the new album Shapeshifting. So he invented this box, which he ended up selling it to the folks at Radio. And so I've got the Radio ones of this, but I also have the original reamp that actually John gave me. And there's a trim control that there was actually a stream that Joe did where he was talking about this box, and the trim actually allows you to kind of either starve the amplifier for input if maybe your pickups were a little bit hotter to pair with the amp, and you're like, you got a great performance, but man, I hit the amp too loud, too hard, so you can back it up, or more often you goose it a little bit and just get a little bit more out of the front end of the amplifier, which is 99% of what I do 99% of the time. So that said, for people that aren't familiar with what reamping is, the idea is that, and the funny thing is, I remember Joe telling me that Rick James used to do this with his guitar players, and Joe was incensed about the idea that Rick James would have him cut a raw DI, and then the guitar player would leave, and then Rick would dial in their tone for them. So it's like it wasn't the guitar player creating; it was Rick. So and it was a deep sense of social injustice that the guitar player had the ability to create their own tone robbed from them. So that said, ironically, the birth of and this thing's been used by everybody now. And so what it enables you to do is to take a raw recording of the guitar and then run that back out from your DAW into this box, into the front end of your amplifier, and then you're able to re-amplify that signal. Technically, you're not really re-amplifying it. It's actually kind of like a high-pass filter or a low-pass filter. It's one of those things that could be confusing because of the nomenclature, but basically you're recording a direct signal, sometimes just taking a split of the signal and then capturing that raw DI, coming out of your DAW into the reamp, into the front end of your amplifier, and then you're able to not only change which amplifier or settings you're using, but also the mics and the mic placement and all of that. So one of the great things is you can also reamp in the virtual world with Helix, and it's done, I think, on USB 3 and 4, and it's kind of one of my big mysteries because I've never actually been able to do it. So since Eric, you're here,
in Helix, it's the dry tracks are USB 7 and 8. The guitar by default, if you route so by default, if you just plug Helix into your DAW, the main outputs, like what you would hear out of your speakers, go in on USB 1 and 2 into your DAW. But if you're recording into Logic or Cubase or Pro Tools or whatever, if you just add one extra track and you set it to USB 7 and you record that at the same time, you're recording the processed with all the amps and the effects and everything on tracks 1 and 2, and you're recording the dry, completely unaffected, just the raw guitar tone on track 3. And then later on, you can do one of two things. You can route that track 3 back through Helix and then change things, completely change the preset, completely change the amps, can change the effects, do whatever you want. Or you can instantiate Ryan's plugin or Amplitube or Helix Native, and you can apply it straight in the computer itself.
Pretty groovy. Ryan?
Yes, sir.
We did a class on reamping, and actually, I've still got your settings on my Boogie because, like, you know how to dial in a nice aggressive tone. Tell us a little bit about your journey with reamping, both with real amps and in the virtual world.
I started the hard way. One of the reasons I started the channel is because no one would tell me how to reamp. I would find people that knew how to reamp, and they wouldn't tell me. And it was like some guarded secret. At that time, this is 2010, and that really upset me and made me quite angry. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to learn all of the secrets, and I'm going to tell everyone for free. Because God forbid everyone sounds good or gets a good tone or is able to, reamp into a great amp or send their DI somewhere and reamp through an amp they'll never be able to afford. Oh no. So I started out by plugging in an output of my PreSonus interface at the time straight into an amp, and it sounded horrible, and I had no idea why. And then apparently I needed some kind of a box so you could reverse a DI box. There was a video about that, which that didn't work either. So then I got a reamp box, but I got a really crappy one, and I didn't know it, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, literally through trial and error is normally how I learn everything. So it took me like a full year of trying to reamp and really understanding gain staging at the same time in order to do it effectively and properly and to get comfortable with it. And then into the digital realm, It's hard because, you know, I have an Apollo. I have it like a full tilt universal audio setup, and like I just did a rig tour, like a studio tour on my channel, and people are like, "Why don't you just reamp and go and, you know, use the Helix or use the Fractal as an interface, and then you do the digital in and out via SBIF." I'm just like, yeah, but I don't want to use those as my interface because I have the universal audio as the interface. So I don't generally
use Ampage back there. So yeah,
I don't want to disconnect through all of my stuff just to hook up, you know, just for the sake of going digital. Although that would be cool, but I haven't utilized the Helix or any of those digital things digitally, like straight keeping it digital, SBIF in and out. I have not done that. I use them as if they were a real amp. So I use a reamp box out of my universal audio, and I will go straight into the guitar input as if it were an amplifier. I know that works.
I love it. No, okay. Just for anybody watching, we're about to go into geekdom. Like it's coming in our final half an hour, and I think we're not going to do modes tonight. We're just going to hang out. And if you guys are good, we got another 25 minutes. That work for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So Eric, that is a Symphony IO, right?
Yeah, that's the Rev 1. Yeah.
Okay, so I've been spying that the whole time, and I was like,
Same.
so we're just going to kind of randomly just go crazy geeky now. So
right.
like for anybody that's kind of at the shallow end of the pool, I apologize. But for people that are at the deeper end of the pool, let's just go there. So it's like it's kind of all there. So okay, I'm a Pro Tools guy. Ryan, you totally chastised me. It's like, the old man has appeared. You know, so I what I would like to talk about is kind of like why you use what you use. Now I'm going to start with me. I love the Apollo stuff, and I'm actually the other thing is I want to do because this is where. For people that are looking for the deep end, and for those that stuck around, and that we have some more giveaways, so because we have a Pod Go to give away, and we're not making you have to be present to win it. We don't do that. So the thing is that first of all, on the reamping side, I know a guy who knows a thing or two about reamping. So I was like, what is the best mic pre to get for reamping? And Joe was like, he gave me two different versions of the Millennium Music and Media, and I've got the HV37, which is the most transparent pre I've ever heard. You literally cannot hear that it's in line, but it takes that guitar signal in a completely transparent way. So the deal is, you're coming out of your guitar, you're going into your computer. You want it to sound as if the guitar was not only going into the computer, but coming out of the computer into this box, as if you weren't doing any of that, and it was just going into the front end of the amplifier, because really what you're trying to do is imitate the perfect experience of having played it right the first time, had a mic on the amp or the mic on the Helix virtually or whatever it is, the IR, and having nailed it and having it sit perfectly in the track. The reason you reamp is sometimes you're looking for a performance. And one of the interesting things is I was dealing with, I've got this actually, so just to prove I'm not a gear snob, it's a Mustang LT50. I love this little flipping amp. I can't get enough of this thing. It's ridiculous. It's got a DI out with a 1/4 inch. I mean, it's just like, it's ridiculous. I'm like, seriously? But the interesting thing that I noticed as I was playing with a guitar that I'm not going to mention what guitar it was, with one track it sounded great, and on the other track it didn't. And it's the same exact guitar sound. So the point being is that you may have the perfect sound, and all of a sudden you hear it in the one track, and you're like, oh, that sounds horrid. And the funny thing is, it's a tone you dialed in. Listen to something. That is the best guitar tone ever. And then you hear it juxtaposed with a different set of drums and bass. And again, Eric, it kind of gets back to that point of changing the rig. Is sometimes the rig is just the wrong rig for the gig, which is why the ability to change that rig out. But the point being is that the ability to, after the fact, come back and go, you know what, it was the wrong amplifier. And instead of being married to it and having to sit there and post and trying to EQ it and what is that? UA plugin, something Vampire, something like that. Ryan, you're a UA guy. The Thermion.
Oh, Vulture?
Culture Vulture, thank you. So that's what, when the distortion isn't right, that's what I bring on and try and fix it in the mix, which is totally ghetto. Like, you know, when I do gear demos, it's 99.9% of the time I don't add EQ because it's ingenious. If I can't capture the sound of the thing into the DAW, then I'm kind of faking you out, which is totally lame. But every so often I'm building a mix, and I'm just like, once you put it in the mix, you're like, the thing that I was trying to build in a mix format, it just sounded bad. I'm like, okay, I need to fix some stuff. So the idea of being able to reamp and fix that problem correctly is one of the solutions you got. So I'm a big UA guy. I have 3 different UA interfaces, 2 of the small an Apollo Twin and an Apollo Duo, and the Apollo 8. I love them. I'm a Pro Tools guy because I came from big recording studios with tape. The experience of Pro Tools is like that. That's why I use what I use. I'd love for you guys to talk about, because I did a demo for the Apogee. What's their box that's about yay big?
Quattro?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's great about it is it's iOS compatible. So you literally use your iPad. I mean, it's basically a 4-channel mic pre with great, Apogee mic pre's. You can't go into a studio and not see their Apogee. In any case, let's not talk about that side of stuff. Let's talk about the home studio dialed. So Eric, why did you go with the Symphony IO?
Well, I'm a UA guy too. Mine are just PCIe cards in the Mac Pro. I've been Apogee forever. Before that, I had an 88,000, which I was running as a front end for a Pro Tools HD rig with Logic as a front end. So I was a Logic TM guy since the late 90s. Can't really tell here. So, I have everything going into the Symphony. So I've been in the box for decades. So everything is direct except for vocals now, pretty much. And so Logic is my mixer. So I just want to play something and I just want to jam. It's a huge pain. So I don't know if everyone can see this. So the Apogee is my Logic interface. I have a dangerous V-box here, which I'm acting as an analog mix bus. So all the outputs of Symphony go into that, because not so much that I'm sold on the sonic advantages of analog mix buses as much as the workflow that I do, because I do a lot of busing and multiple outputs. But what's nice about it is multiple inputs. So my Helix goes into the Apogee via XLR. So I'm actually doing a pair of conversions. But I'm also use it as an aggregate device with the Symphony, so I can actually access it digitally via USB simultaneously. But then I also have the AES of it coming into the D box. So if I just walk into the studio, I hit that switch, and now Helix gets automatically routed to my speakers without the computer having to be on. So for me, it's all about how can I crank out music as fast as possible, and if I just want to play, I don't want to have to actually boot up the entire rig and load up a Logic project and then instantiate something just to play it. So it's speed of use, ease of use.
I know who the freshman in the room is. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Yeah, I was doing that last week.
UA outboard too, but yeah.
And can you explain, because I've actually got a dangerous box, but it's actually, I'm not using it. I'm actually going to I'm about to probably put it up on Reverb. Can you explain kind of why you'd use a box like that?
Well, you need some way to control your speaker volume. So, UA have the built-in monitor controller, and Mackie's made them forever, and a bunch of people make monitor controllers. The D-Box just happens to have an analog 8-channel summing mixer built in. So the reason I use summing is because all of the songs I write have way too many things going on, and I spent so much time messing with gain staging so I wasn't clipping outputs and I wasn't distorting, and I was running all the Logic buses into the red. And so what I can do here is I can run all my drums on a stereo bus, guitars and keys on a stereo bus, vocals on a stereo bus, and then mono kick and mono bass. I can run them out, and now I can control instead of having to do VCAs and all this fancy or mess with a bunch of automation lanes, like, oh, this track needs to come down. Oh no, I got to turn down all of these automation lanes. I can just go to the output and just turn it down. So if I need the drums louder, I can just turn it up. And then this goes back into the symphony on 2 channels. The only thing I don't to do is I can't bounce down faster than real time, but I kind of like the whole process of hitting record and recording back into Logic that way.
I'm going to give my 2 cents about. I just stopped using that, but what the advantage is when you're recording songs as opposed to demos, the advantage is it's really trying to recreate the analog experience of actually kind of going to a 2-track sort of, but the idea, it's not like a console where everything is actually coming out of the stereo bus in the console, but by being able to create that analog separation that happened at a console level before you lived in the digital world, you actually did have things, the drums were grouped into a 2-track that went out that reflected that stereo mix where you had a compressor on there, or for example, you did a parallel compression. Parallel. So New York drums, what the idea with the New York drums was what you would do is you would do an extreme compression on the drums, and then generally you would have half of the extreme compression, and then the other half is the uncompressed, and then you would put them side by side.
Parallel compression, you smack the crap out of it with super fast attack and release, and you just blend it in, and it just makes drums.
And so that happening kind of in the console was why the D-Box is so nice, because you kind of get that console-like experience. And ironically, you're coming out of the box, going into the D-Box, and then going back out and recording it into Pro Tools or whatever your DAW is, Logic. And so, what it does is it gives it that little bit of analog lift and a little bit of breath to it, and you get the separation. It's kind of like using a rack system for your delays and your reverbs on a guitar setup, so you can actually kind of do the equivalent of an aux bus, which is different than running things in line on your guitar channel. That is to say, in the digital realm, you got your guitar track. Instead of just putting a delay plug-in on it, you send an aux bus off of that feeds into a delay track that is running delay 100% pure delay. You bring that up, and it just gives you as much delay as you need without the delay and the direct signal getting in the way of each other. And so that separation adds some depth of field in the mix. Ryan, are you as long as we're on the geekerdry, I mean, you've spent a bunch of time in real studios as well. So do you behave differently in a larger studio than you do in your home studio, or do you just kind of take your workflow in and just kind of go, this is what I do?
No, if I'm tracking drums, if I'm doing a record and I take and if they have the budget for tracking real drums or something like that, I love going to an actual studio and utilizing an API console and a bunch of old Neve preamps and ancient Pultecs and all that kind of stuff. That stuff is a lot of fun, but old vintage outboard gear, in my experience, is usually not very reliable, or if you have several old LE2As, they'll each sound different. All the things like that. So like at home, I am all universal audio. I have an Apollo 8, and then I have an X4 as a monitor controller, so I can also utilize its DSP. And then I have a UAD2 satellite. And then I'm all in the box. And then I have a Helix on the left bank and a Boss Wazacraft tube amp expander and some Synergy modules on the left bank. And then on the right bank is a Neve preamp and a Fractal Axe FX. And that's all I need.
So have you ever been working on a session and have one of those old pieces? There was a studio called Alpha and Omega, and I remember the guy used to have to kick the rack to get one of the rack units to work. Because there was some wiring that you couldn't get to the piece in a giant rack. So like you had to kick it just right. So you're in the middle of tracking this, or you're in the middle of mixing this thing, and this piece of analog gear that is now an integral part of the entire mix is now failing. So, it's just kind of, it's just kind of one of those things. So
I'm not into that. I'm into consistency and reliability. So yeah, that's why I love the universal audio stuff. Cause like, who better to make a digital version of my favorite 1176 than Universal Audio? So, and do you like? What's that?
Do you like? So my favorite, as long as we're going to go there. So basically, anything that I do that I put out in video, I use the 1176 Rev A, and I used the Andy Johns stereo bus preset because I figured if there's anybody that knows how to do a stereo bus, it's Andy Johns.
Yeah.
And the other one that he has is that I like to use if there's something with a guitar melody is his lead vocal one, because if I find that the stereo bus one isn't quite enough, the lead vocal one is gorgeous. And then John Cuniberti actually designed the UA precision limiter, and so for any of you that are creating videos on the UA stuff, yeah, no, it's really killer.
Really good, yeah,
really good. -4 dB, nothing gets above that. And I've had other limiters that I used before that, and it's an interesting thing. Again, we're getting geeky here. There's digital overages that sometimes you won't see them on the meters. That is to say, it doesn't peak, but I did a thing with Sweetwater, and it was a Guitars and Gear Live thing that we did with my old company, Gear Tunes and Premier Guitar, and we went out to Sweetwater to do it. And before I went out there, some of the video stuff was pre-recorded, and I sent it to their production guy, and he said, "This track's clipping," and I'm like, because I know that I clamp things at a certain dB level. I'm like, there's no way. And he sends it back, and I'm like, the track's clipping.
Wow.
And I hadn't caught it, and it was blatantly a digital overage. But the thing is, you get so confident in the meter that you're just like, well, it wasn't an overage on the meter. But again, I think meters can be frequency centric. So there'll be frequencies that they won't meter the overage on because it's not metering every single, at least that particular one. But the great thing about the precision limiter is nothing gets above 4 dB, -4 dB when you set it there. But what's neat is I can kind of coax that and choose how much I actually push things up to the limiting ceiling, and kind of it's a great tool to kind of be able to mess with the overall loudness, but still keeping that ceiling at a set point. So, because the thing is, when you're going back and forth between dialogue and playing, it's that fine line. You don't want the dialogue to be super loud. And in my experience, one of the things I'm discovering now is that -4 dB dialogue sounds a little bit louder than the music. So I'm starting to back off how hot I set the precision limiter, such that there's actually a little bit more dynamic range in the vocals, such that on the music, I'm actually pumping it up a little bit further in the limiting range. So, limiting. Ryan, any studio geekadry stuff that you just kind of like go to in the spirit of kind of what you said before? Because if you hadn't said, I just want to show people how to do stuff that I had that other people weren't willing to show me. It's kind of like you're the opening act and you get no lights and you get 2 channels on the console. What are some of the things that you've learned that you're like, hey, this is stuff that's go to either on a regular basis or it's secret sauce when you need to go to it?
Learning how to tell if something's in phase or out of phase, or phasing 2 microphones was like, or multiple microphones was just, oh man, incredible. There's a guy named James Lugo that used to be in LA. I think now he's out in Nashville.
I saw the video with the amps, with the 8 different amps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Way back?
Yes.
Back
No. And showing you how to phase align the amps he had like 10 different amps. Go for it, please. Sorry. Yes, I saw that.
Yes. And he still has a YouTube channel, and he's an audio engineer guy. And I remember seeing that. I thought, oh man, my brain exploded. The way he explained it just really clicked, and I was like, oh man, I've been doing it wrong. So, I mean, using your ears is always still the best. They weren't worried about waveforms, lining up waveforms back in the 70s, obviously, because they couldn't see anything. But, if you care about that kind of thing and want to get it aligned for whatever reason, the way he explained it really made a lot of sense to me.
And he was aligning like 8 or 10 amps. He had all the right amps. And, I'm going to go on the amp geekadry thing. Hang on a second. Hang on a second here. Let's just do one thing here. All right. Let me see here. Alexandra Mauri. from the Colony, Texas. Won a Pod Go. Congratulations.
Cool.
Congratulations.
Okay. Now, let's see. I actually know this guy, Brenton Maynell. He won the Fluff plugin. So what you guys didn't know was that, yeah, Fluff was kind enough to donate one of his. Well, it's a code for all of the Miko amped plugins. So Brenton, congratulations, and Brenton, he's a student of mine. Is a Pro Tools guy. Sorry, Ryan. But the other thing is that with Miko, and I don't know with the amped, there's a wrapper that I read about that you can use to load it in Pro Tools because
AAX we're in beta. It's almost done. There was a huge hang up waiting for someone at Avid to approve the frickin' version to AAX because I didn't know Avid has to approve all AAX plugins. There was literally no one at the office for like 3 weeks. So we were just waiting. So we finally got that, and now it's in final beta. So it will be available in Pro Tools any day.
Okay, no, that's and that's great. And then let's see. And I hold on. I need to start writing this down. I can watch the thread. Gunnar Schubert, you have won a courtesy of Frank. How do you pronounce his name? Richotte?
Richotte. Yep.
Frank is kind enough to donate a Line 6 Helix native license. So you've won Line 6 Helix native, and David Escamilla, you also won amped. So congratulations, and really appreciate everybody that's kind of been hanging out and being part of this thing. Thank you very much. And for everybody that's still here, let's see how many people are still in the room. 54 people on Facebook. You guys are awesome. And 24 people on YouTube. Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. So in our final moments here, any kind of, wisdom, kind of like, I've been thinking about this and I wish, people knew this or understood this, or kind of, maybe Ryan, for you, it's just like, if people understood how much work goes into behind the scenes, what they see in the front, and Eric, anything is like, the heart and the hours and the blood, sweat, and tears that go into creating Helix, anything that's on your heart to share.
I deserve no pity whatsoever. We get to come to work and make cool gear all day. So.
Yep. No complaints. No complaints.
Ryan, Doug, and I are very fortunate that we get to do this. So.
Yes. Very, very fortunate.
Mike Rand, thank you very much. Marcelo Giulio, thank you. Chris, thank you. Chris Stark, a Dreamcatcher Events Shredderonius. Let's see. James, hey, James. Chris. Andrew, Quad. Diego, hey, what's going on, Diego? The drink looks yummy. Guys, we really appreciate your hanging out. We got about 2 minutes left. So as we kind of think about the tail end of this coronavirus thing, I think one of my favorite things is that guitar players are creating more content than I think they've ever done before. And I think, for me, that's one of the greatest things about this. The hack of the night. Oh gosh, I hope I can find it. And this goes out to Andrew Bonica. Props. Oh snap! I undongled myself. All right, so here's the hack of the. Nope, this is the wrong one. Darn it. So the Helix hack is this. Is that if you've got the right dongle, I can't believe it's not here. If you've got the right dongle, you can use your iPhone to stream with a Helix. Not only that, you can actually run out of the US. So it's basically USB to Lightning, and you can use your Helix because Andrew's done it, so he's tested it. The genius that he is. And Andrew Monica is a genius. He holds like I think 6 degrees and speaks 20 languages. But the thing is that what he has tested is the ability to go into Helix, use the microphone, so you've got a vocal mic to talk or sing, and then in turn you can run your amp models and you can stream it from your phone.
You just need the camera kit. That's it.
You just need that camera kit. So
Yep.
I mean that's crazy. I mean, like the concept.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. What are you new here?
Oh. Yeah.
Ryan, there we go. Melissa Doppler, promote next week's show. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, next week, we've got the one and only Mark Lettieri, and we're also going to be doing some more giveaway gear. Thank you very much to our friends over at Dunlop/MXR. For the time being, until kind of everybody gets back to work, we're going to be going from 7 until 10. And I promise you, next week I'm gonna play a bunch, and you'll probably be really tired of me playing as opposed to getting tired of me talking. But this whole USB thing, I mean, Fluff, did you know you could run your Helix into your phone?
No.
Dude,
did not know that.
So I'm not alone in the kind of like, my head was blown. Like I had a buddy from a gear company call me up and say, I'm trying to stream and all I got was my phone. I was like, and he said, I couldn't just run into the USB somehow into there. And I was like, I don't think you can do that. And so I reached out to Andrew. He's like, well, I did that last week. And I was like, oh, snap. So like, so what it means is that you don't need an audio, because Helix is essentially functioning as an audio interface, but it also means that you could use an audio interface as USB out to run into your phone and actually be able to stream from that. So for those of you that are thinking you got to get some crazy streaming thing, it basically means that if you've got enough battery power, there's a company whose gear I'm going to be demoing next week, I think, that has made a whole battery, and the whole new thing, by the way, is this whole battery-powered power supply now. This thing. So basically, you could be streaming without a power supply.
Yep.
So we're there, folks. All right. On behalf of everybody that's been here tonight, Eric Klein, thank you. Brian Fluff Bruce, thank you. Joe Satriani, thank you. But most importantly, all the people that have been here over the course. This is every Wednesday, Eric. Thank you very much. Chris Oshuck's back. You guys have been great. And please hang out. And also, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to ring the bell, all of that. And let's see if I can actually do this all fancy like. So I got my, I'm going to this. I guess it's not all fancy like when you announce it, because then you're like, we saw that coming. All right, so we're going to go here, and we're going to go there. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And in about 5 minutes, we're going to be off the air. Thanks so much. Have a great night. Thanks for hanging out. Bye, gentlemen.
See ya.
It's all done. Hey. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the beginning.